Hey guys, tonight we're going to step through a hidden gate, not into a misty village of forgotten warriors, but into a place far more vibrant, yet arguably just as confining. Imagine, if you will, that you are not a shadow in a tattered kimono, but a keen observer, perhaps a curious merchant, or a young artist, newly arrived in the bustling heart of Edo. The year is not 1603, but a little later as the city has truly swelled, its arteries pumping with commerce and culture. You stand on the precipice of a world built for pleasure, a world known as Yashiwara, the floating world. You feel the thrum of the city even before you enter. The air here, unlike the quiet of a rural dawn, is thick with the scent of incense, expensive perfumes, and a subtle undercurrent of sake. The distant murmur of samisen music drifts on the breeze, a tantalizing promise of what lies within. Around you, lanterns glow with a soft, inviting light, painting the path ahead in hues of amber and rose. This isn't just a district. It's a universe unto itself, walled off from the mundane concerns of everyday Edo, where beauty is currency and dreams are bought and sold. You're about to witness lives lived in exquisite, gilded cages. You probably won't survive this journey with your notions of freedom entirely intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cozy, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far we travel together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the grand entrance to Yashiwara, the Amen Gate, a formidable structure that serves as both a welcome and a barrier. Once you pass through, you'll discover that leaving is not as simple as arriving. The streets inside are meticulously planned, a labyrinth designed to confuse the uninitiated and keep its inhabitants contained. Unlike the organic sprawl of Edo, Yashiwara is a microcosm of order and artifice. You glance up, noticing the intricate carvings on the gate, depicting mythical creatures and symbols of good fortune, a stark contrast to the human dramas unfolding within. The gate itself is a marvel of Edo engineering and aesthetics. It's not just a wooden archway, it's a statement, a threshold between the ordinary world and the extraordinary. As you step through, the sounds intensify. The clatter of geta on wooden planks, the hushed laughter from behind latticed windows, the call of street vendors selling sweet rice cakes and warm tea. It's a sensory overload, a symphony of urban life orchestrated around the pursuit of pleasure. You notice the meticulous cleanliness of the streets, a testament to the high standards maintained within this pleasure quarter. Every detail, from the swept pathways to the freshly watered plants in ceramic pots, contributes to the illusion of perfection. This isn't a place for the unrefined. Even the air seems to carry a certain weight of expectation, an unspoken demand for elegance and poise. You find yourself adjusting your posture, as if unconsciously trying to meet the unspoken standards of this world. The buildings here are not the humble huts you might have seen in the countryside. These are grand, multi-storied structures, their facades adorned with intricate woodwork and painted screens. The light from within spills out onto the streets, inviting and mysterious. It's a stage, and every person here, from the highest-ranking courtesan to the lowliest errand boy, plays a role. You might pause to admire the shopfronts, displaying luxurious silks, ornate hairpins, and delicate pottery. These are the ancillary businesses that thrive on the wealth pouring into Yashiwara, catering to the needs and desires of both its residents and its clientele. Think of it like a very, very high-end shopping mall, but where the most precious commodities are human connection and fleeting joy. Historians still argue whether Yashiwara was primarily a place of entertainment or a highly regulated institution of social control. The truth, as you'll soon discover, is probably a complex blend of both. As you wander deeper, you begin to observe the residents of this unique district. You see young apprentices, called kamuro, no older than 7 or 8, already dressed in miniature kimonos, their small faces painted white. They scurry through the streets, running errands for their respective houses, their innocence a poignant contrast to the sophisticated world they are growing into. Then there are the Shinzo, older apprentices, learning the ropes, their movements more graceful, their conversations more practiced. They are on the cusp of becoming fully fledged courtesans, their future mapped out within these walls. It's a strange mixture of childhood and burgeoning adulthood, all happening within a highly structured environment. It's almost like a specialized boarding school, but instead of calculus, the curriculum involves the art of seduction and conversation. You might even find yourself chuckling at the thought of a courtesan report card, grading on charm and kimono-wearing proficiency. The main thoroughfare, Nakamachi, bustles with activity. Samurai, merchants, and even commoners, if they could afford it, stroll along, their eyes drawn to the latticed windows of the akiya, the houses of the courtesans. Behind these lattices, glimpses of exquisite beauty are occasionally afforded, just enough to tantalize and entice. This is the stage for the Warin Dachu, the grand procession of the highest-ranking courtesans, a spectacle we'll delve into later. For now, you are merely a spectator, absorbing the atmosphere. The architecture itself tells a story. The akiya are often grander than the surrounding shops, their entrances designed to impress, their interiors a labyrinth of private rooms and public spaces. You might notice the specific types of wood used, the quality of the paper screens, the subtle scent of cypress that often permeated these elite establishments. Even the way the light filters through the shoji screens creates an ethereal glow, adding to the mystique. It's a carefully crafted illusion, designed to transport you from the mundane into a realm of refined beauty. It's like stepping into a perfectly curated museum exhibit, but with a pulse. You might wonder about the women who inhabit these gilded cages. What are their lives truly like? From the outside, you see only the glamour, the expensive kimonos, the elaborate hairstyles. But you can sense the underlying structure, the invisible bars of this beautiful prison. There's a curious tidbit about Yashiwara. Fire was a constant threat due to the wooden structures and open flames. The district was rebuilt many times after devastating fires, each time adhering to the same meticulous layout, almost as if destiny itself was trying to reset the stage for these dramatic lives. Yet, despite the fires and rebuilding, the spirit of Yashiwara, the floating world, always endured like a phoenix rising from the ashes, ready to enchant anew. As you continue your stroll, you might notice the signs, elegantly written in calligraphy, indicating the names of the akiya and sometimes even the names of their most celebrated courtesans. These aren't just advertisements. They are statements of prestige, announcing the presence of beauty and talent within. You also observe the yarite, the experienced older women who manage the courtesans, often former courtesans themselves. Their faces, though perhaps aged, still carry an air of authority and shrewdness. They are the gatekeepers, the arbiters of taste and reputation, guiding the lives of the women under their charge. They're like the ultimate stage mothers, but with much higher stakes. This place, Yashiwara, is a testament to the Edo period's unique blend of strict social hierarchy and flourishing urban culture. While the samurai class adhered to rigid codes of conduct, the pleasure quarters offered a space, albeit a contained one, where different rules applied. Here, wealth could sometimes transcend birth, and wit could elevate a woman to legendary status. Yet, for all its glitter, it was fundamentally a business, built upon the beauty and labor of its women. You find a quiet spot to observe, perhaps near a small tea stall, sipping a cup of warm hojicha. The steam rises, blurring the edges of the vibrant scene before you. It's easy to get lost in the romance of it all, the exotic beauty, the fleeting encounters. But beneath the surface, you can sense the currents of desperation, ambition, and the quiet dignity of those who made their lives here. This is not just a historical location. It is a complex social ecosystem, thriving on a delicate balance of desire and detachment. You might even imagine the faint, melancholic strains of a shakuhachi flute playing in the distance, a somber counterpoint to the vibrant energy of the district. As you move beyond the bustling Nakamachi and delve into the quieter, more exclusive alleys of Yashiwara, you begin to grasp the rigid structure that governs every life within this district. It's not just a collection of houses. It's a meticulously organized society with its own laws, customs, and most importantly, its own hierarchy. You, the curious observer, feel the shift in atmosphere. The general clamor gives way to a more subdued hum, punctuated by the delicate strumming of a shamisen or the soft murmur of polite conversation from behind closed doors. You might notice that the akiya, the courtesan houses, become grander, their entrances more discreet, yet radiating an undeniable air of importance. Each house is a universe unto itself, managed with an iron fist, albeit often cloaked in silk. At the top of this domestic pyramid is the akasan, or mother, the proprietress of the akiya. She is typically a former courtesan herself, a woman of immense business acumen and social grace, who has successfully navigated the treacherous currents of the floating world to achieve financial independence. You can sense her authority, even from a distance, in the way the junior staff defer to her, and the hushed respect with which her name is spoken. She's the CEO, the HR department, and the chief emotional support officer all rolled into one. And let's be honest, probably has a better poker face than any professional player today. Beneath the akasan are various layers of staff. You see the yarite, the house managers we briefly touched upon, who oversee the daily operations, manage appointments, and act as intermediaries between the courtesans and their clients. They are often stern, no-nonsense women, their eyes missing nothing, their minds sharper than any samurai's blade when it comes to business. Then there are the Kamuro and Shinzo, the young apprentices, still in training. Their days are filled with lessons in music, dance, calligraphy, poetry, and the intricate etiquette required of a courtesan. You might observe a small group of Kamuro practicing their bowing, their tiny figures attempting to emulate the perfect grace of their elders. It's a grueling education, far more demanding than anything you might remember from your own school days. The courtesans themselves are divided into ranks, a system as complex and detailed as any bureaucratic government. At the very pinnacle stands the warin, the highest-ranking courtesan, a woman of unparalleled beauty, artistic talent, and intellectual prowess. To be in Warren is to be a celebrity, a trendsetter, a living work of art. Her beauty is legendary, her wit sharper than any blade, and her presence commands reverence. You might catch a fleeting glimpse of Warren behind a screen, her elaborate hair adorned with dozens of ornate pins, her kimono a cascade of exquisite silk, and her face a porcelain mask of serene perfection. It's an almost otherworldly sight, designed to inspire awe and desire. Below the Warren are the Teu, a rank that eventually merged with Warren, and then various levels of Koshi and Taro, each with their own set of privileges, prices, and specific customs governing their interactions with clients. The higher the rank, the more exclusive and formal the encounters. You wouldn't just walk up to Warren and request her company. It was a process, a series of elaborate rituals and engagements that required significant investment and patience from the client. It was like trying to book a private audience with royalty, but with better sake. This strict ranking system was not merely for show. It dictated every aspect of a courtesan's life, from the size of her room and the quality of her kimono to the type of clients she entertained. It also reflected her accumulated debt to the Akiya. Remember, most girls entered Yashiwara as young children, sold by impoverished families or orphaned. Their initial purchase price and all subsequent expenses, food, lodging, training, kimonos, makeup, were meticulously recorded and formed a debt that they were expected to repay through their work. Historians still argue whether the courtesans were effectively slaves or if they held a surprising degree of agency within their constrained world. It's a debate that highlights the complex morality of the floating world. You see a young Shinzo carrying a tray with several delicate teacups, her posture perfect, her eyes downcast. She's probably practicing her serving technique, an essential skill. Every movement, every gesture, every word had to be refined and graceful. This wasn't just about physical beauty. It was about cultivating an entire persona, an aura of sophistication and allure. It's a far cry from, say, a modern-day customer service job, where the most complex etiquette might be remembering to say, "Have a nice day." The daily routine within an Akiya is incredibly disciplined. From dawn, when the first light barely pierced the paper screens, to late into the night, every hour was scheduled. There were lessons in music, dance, tea ceremony, flower arranging, calligraphy, and poetry. Physical upkeep was paramount, elaborate hairstyling, applying layers of white foundation and vibrant pigments, dressing in multi-layered kimonos that weighed several pounds. You might notice the specific types of combs and brushes used, the small pots of rice powder, the tiny brushes for painting lips into delicate Cupid's bows. It's an art form in itself, the transformation from a girl to a courtesan, a daily ritual of meticulous self-presentation. A quirky tidbit: to maintain the elaborate hairstyles, high-ranking courtesans often slept on special small wooden blocks called takamakura, rather than soft pillows. This prevented their intricate coiffures from being disturbed overnight. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep with your head balanced precariously on a wooden block. It certainly puts your ergonomic pillow to shame. It's an amusing detail, but also a stark reminder of the sacrifices made for the sake of appearances. You observe the living quarters, which, for the lower-ranked courtesans, might be quite modest, shared rooms with futons neatly folded away. But for the Warren, their chambers are exquisite, often featuring a small private garden, elegant tokonoma alcoves displaying seasonal flowers or scrolls, and lacquered furniture. These rooms are designed not just for comfort, but for the performance of their art and the entertainment of their elite clientele. They are stages within the larger stage of Yashiwara. The rules governing interactions with clients were equally strict. For the higher ranks, especially the Waran, initial meetings were often purely formal. The client would visit the Akiya, present gifts, and engage in polite conversation, often without the courtesan even speaking a word. She would merely observe, assessing the man's character and wealth. Only after several such visits, and if the courtesan expressed an interest, would a more intimate encounter be permitted. It was a game of courtship, played by very specific rules, designed to enhance the courtesan's mystique and elevate her value. It was a masterclass in delayed gratification, both for the client and for the house. You might hear whispers about the 3 times rule for an Waran. A client had to pay 3 times to see her before he could even dream of spending a night. The first visit, she would greet him from a distance, perhaps behind a screen. The second, she might speak a few words, but still no direct interaction. Only on the third visit, if she chose, would she truly engage with him. It was a system designed to weed out the less serious and less wealthy patrons, ensuring that only the most dedicated and affluent gained access to these living treasures. The life of a courtesan, for all its outward glamour, was one of constant performance and adherence to strict regulations. You see a junior courtesan practicing her shamisen, her brow furrowed in concentration. The notes are delicate, precise, but there's an underlying tension in her posture. Every gesture, every word, every note played contributed to her reputation and her ability to attract patrons. Her success was the house's success, and her failure could lead to deeper debt and a less desirable future. As the day turns into evening, you observe the preparations for the night's business. The Akiya come alive with a renewed energy. Lamps are lit, soft music begins to emanate from within, and the air becomes even more fragrant. The courtesans, now fully transformed, are ready to receive their guests. You realize that the hierarchy you've just observed is not just about status. It's about control, about creating an environment where every element, from the smallest apprentice to the most celebrated Waran, plays a carefully defined role in the grand spectacle of the floating world. It's a system designed to maximize profit and uphold an illusion of untouchable elegance. You've now seen the glittering facade of Yashiwara and understood the strict hierarchy within its walls. But how does a young girl, often from a destitute family, come to inhabit such a paradoxical position of both high status and profound restriction? You follow the path, from its earliest, tender beginnings to the arduous ascent to the coveted title of Waran. It's a journey not of choice, but of circumstance, shaped by the harsh economic realities of Edo Japan. Imagine, if you will, a small, humble village, perhaps not unlike the one you might have glimpsed at the start of our journey. The year is 1750, a time when poverty could force unthinkable decisions upon families. A young girl, perhaps no older than 7 or 8, with bright, inquisitive eyes and a spirit that has yet to be dimmed, is about to embark on a path she did not choose. Her parents, facing starvation or insurmountable debt, make the agonizing decision to sell her into the Yashiwara district. This isn't a transaction born of malice, but of desperation, a last resort to ensure at least one child's survival, and perhaps the survival of the rest of the family through the influx of funds. You watch as she arrives at the Amen gate, no longer a curious observer like yourself, but a bewildered child. She is taken directly to an Akiya, her new home, which will be both her school and her prison. Here, she is given a new name, often one that sounds poetic or beautiful, erasing her past identity and marking her transformation. She becomes a kamuro, the lowest rung on the ladder, a young apprentice. You might feel a pang of sadness as you witness this scene, knowing the innocence that is being shed at this very threshold. It's like watching a butterfly emerge from its chrysalis, but into a cage. The life of a kamuro is one of rigorous training and endless chores. You might see her sweeping floors, helping with laundry or fetching water, her small hands learning the rhythm of the household. But alongside these mundane tasks, her education begins. She is taught how to walk with grace, how to speak with politeness, and how to carry herself with an air of composure. These are the foundational lessons in the art of being a courtesan. It's like a very strict finishing school, but with much higher stakes and no graduation ceremony to a life of true freedom. She learns to play the shamisen, its 3 strings capable of producing sounds both joyous and melancholic. You hear the hesitant plucking of a child's fingers, gradually gaining confidence and skill. She is taught classical dances, her tiny body learning to move with fluidity and expression. She learns calligraphy, her brush strokes becoming increasingly elegant, and the nuances of poetry, allowing her to compose verses that touch the heart. You might even find it amusing to think of her getting detention for a poorly written haiku. But it's not just about artistic skills. The kamuro is also educated in the art of conversation. She learns about current events, literature, history, and even politics, so she can engage intelligently with the sophisticated clientele. She observes the senior courtesans, mimicking their gestures, their subtle smiles, their charming banter. This immersion is total. Her entire being is molded to become an object of beauty, intellect, and refined pleasure. As she grows, typically around the age of 15 or 16, she transitions from kamuro to shinzo. This is a significant step, as she now begins to assist the higher-ranked courtesans more directly, acting as their personal attendant. This provides her with invaluable hands-on experience, allowing her to observe the complex rituals of entertaining patrons firsthand. You might see her helping an warin dress, meticulously arranging her kimono layers, or serving tea during a formal meeting, all while absorbing every detail of the interaction. The shinzo also has her first, albeit limited, interactions with clients. These are not intimate encounters, but opportunities to practice her conversational skills and charm in a supervised setting. It's her debut, her chance to make an impression and start building her own reputation. At this stage, her debt to the Akiya has accumulated significantly, encompassing not just her initial purchase, but years of living expenses, education, and the cost of her burgeoning wardrobe. Historians still argue whether the system of debt was a necessary evil to support the elaborate lifestyle of the courtesans, or a deliberate mechanism to perpetually trap them. It's a fundamental ethical dilemma at the heart of the floating world. The decision of whether a shinzo would eventually become an warin was not based solely on beauty or talent. It was a complex calculation involving her potential to attract wealthy patrons, the house's financial needs, and sometimes even the whim of the Akasan. If she showed exceptional promise, demonstrating not just beauty but also sharp wit, artistic mastery, and a captivating personality, she would be selected for the path to Warren. This involved even more intensive training, focusing on highly specialized arts like the tea ceremony and formal dance, and a deeper understanding of the aristocratic tastes of the most elite clientele. A quirky tidbit: the most highly regarded Warren were not just beautiful, they were considered living embodiments of culture. They would often have extensive libraries within their Akiya rooms, filled with classical poetry, philosophical texts, and historical chronicles, allowing them to engage in truly intellectual discussions with their patrons. It's a far cry from what you might expect of a pleasure quarter, isn't it? It challenges the modern notion of what a courtesan truly was, suggesting a depth beyond mere physical allure. The final step in becoming an Warren was a grand unveiling, a formal declaration of her new status, often accompanied by elaborate processions and celebrations within Yashiwara. You can imagine the excitement, the anticipation within the Akiya as this momentous occasion approached. It was a testament to years of grueling training and dedication, a recognition of her transformation into one of Edo's most iconic figures. But even at the pinnacle, the Warren's life was tightly controlled. Her public appearances were orchestrated, her interactions with clients meticulously managed. While she commanded immense respect and wielded significant influence within Yashiwara, she remained confined by its walls, her freedom a gilded illusion. Her very existence was intertwined with the economic success of her Akiya, and her personal desires often had to be sublimated to her professional role. You might reflect on the stark contrast between the child entering Yashiwara and the magnificent Warren she becomes. The girl, once a simple villager, is now a beacon of beauty, intelligence, and artistry, adorned in kimonos worth small fortunes, her hair a towering sculpture of silk and ornaments. Yet, beneath the layers of silk and white makeup, she is still the same person, navigating a world that demanded everything from her. The training never truly ended. Even as an Warren, she would continue to refine her skills, learn new forms of entertainment, and keep abreast of the latest trends in art and fashion. Her position demanded constant self-improvement and a relentless pursuit of perfection. You might imagine her late at night, after her patrons have departed, practicing a difficult piece on her shamisen or meticulously crafting a new poem, her dedication unwavering. This path, from Kamuro to Shinzo to potential Warren, highlights the unique nature of Yashiwara. It was not just a place of commerce, but a highly sophisticated academy for the performing arts and social graces. The women who emerged from this system were truly extraordinary, possessing a blend of talents and cultivation that few others in Edo society could rival. It was a testament to their resilience and adaptability, as much as to the system that shaped them. And as you consider this journey, you recognize that for many, it was the only path available. A golden cage, perhaps, but for some, it offered a chance at survival, and even a degree of influence and fame that would have been utterly unattainable in the rigid social structure of Edo Japan. It's a sobering thought, reminding you that history often presents choices that are no choices at all. You've observed the rigorous path to becoming an Warren, a journey of immense training and discipline. Now, you'll witness the daily transformation itself, the meticulous and almost sacred rituals of beauty that elevated these women from mere mortals into living works of art. This wasn't just about looking pretty. It was about embodying an ideal, a vision of refined Edo beauty that captivated an entire society. Imagine the early morning light, still soft and diffused, filtering through the paper screens of Anwarin's chamber. You are not there as a guest, but as an invisible presence, observing the intimate preparations. The air is already fragrant with the scent of specialized oils and powders. The day for a high-ranking courtesan begins long before the first client arrives. It is a slow, deliberate process, starting with the skin. First, the cleansing. Not with harsh soaps, but with gentle washes, perhaps made from rice bran, designed to soften and brighten the complexion. Then comes the foundation, a thick white paste made from lead and water, meticulously applied in layers. This wasn't just makeup. It was a canvas, creating a porcelain-like mask that symbolized purity and detachment. You might see a courtesan's kamuro or shinzo assisting, their own small hands carefully dabbing and blending. It's a precise art, requiring a steady hand and an artist's eye, ensuring no streaks or uneven patches. And yes, you might find yourself thinking, "Lead, really? That's going to cause some skin issues down the line." But in Edo, this was the height of beauty standards, a smooth, pale complexion being the ultimate ideal. It was the original glass skin trend, just with a slightly more toxic ingredient list. Once the white foundation is perfect, the features are drawn back in. The eyebrows are often shaved off and redrawn higher on the forehead, giving the face a more elongated, ethereal look. This is done with a fine brush and black ink, a painstaking process that requires absolute precision. Then come the eyes. A touch of red pigment, perhaps derived from safflower, is applied around the outer corners, giving a subtle hint of allure. But the most striking element is the lips. They are painted with a vibrant, glossy red, often with a smaller, stylized cupid's bow shape, making them appear delicate and doll-like. The lower lip might be painted in gold or iridescent green for special occasions, a truly lavish touch that catches the light. The hair is perhaps the most elaborate and time-consuming aspect of the Warin's beauty regimen. You watch in fascination as the Kami Yui, a specialized hairdresser, begins her work. The hair, often long and lustrous, is styled into towering, intricate arrangements, sometimes featuring 3 or more large loops and elaborate knots. These aren't simple buns, they are architectural marvels, requiring combs, pins, and often special pads to hold their shape. This process could take hours, involving multiple hands working in unison. A quirky tidbit, the weight of these elaborate hairstyles, adorned with dozens of ornate hairpins, kanzashi, made of tortoise shell, coral, silver, or even gold, could be quite substantial, often leading to neck pain. It's a reminder that beauty often comes with a price, in this case, literally a pain in the neck. The kanzashi themselves are works of art. You see intricately carved flowers, delicate birds, and abstract designs, each one a miniature sculpture. The number and type of kanzashi worn would indicate the courtesan's rank, the season, and even the occasion. For Anwarin, a full set could be worth a small fortune, adding to her imposing and beautiful silhouette. They are not merely accessories, they are statements of status and taste, shimmering in the light. Then comes the kimono. Ah, the kimono. For Anwarin, this is not just clothing. It is a declaration of wealth, artistry, and status. You might see several shinzo assisting in the dressing. The Warin's kimono is composed of multiple layers, each made of exquisite silk, sometimes embroidered with intricate patterns of cranes, cherry blossoms, or auspicious symbols. The outer kimono, or uchikake, is particularly lavish, often heavily embroidered with gold or silver thread, its designs often indicating the season or a poetic theme. It's so heavy and restrictive that she can barely walk unaided, which is why she moves with that distinctive, slow, swaying gait during public processions. Historians still argue whether the elaborate kimonos were solely for aesthetic appeal, or also served as a visual representation of the courtesan's contractual value and the Akiya's investment in her. The colors are rich and vibrant, in stark contrast to the more subdued tones of everyday Edo attire. You might see deep indigo, vibrant russet, shimmering gold, or cool teal, each layer peeking out from beneath the next, creating a cascade of color and texture. The obi, the wide sash that secures the kimono, is tied in a distinctive knot, often in the front, signaling her status as a courtesan, unlike married women who wore it at the back. This particular detail was not just a fashion statement. It was a clear signifier of her profession, instantly recognizable to anyone in Edo. The final touches involve delicate fans, often painted with scenes of nature or poetry, and the distinctive high-platformed geta, the wooden clogs, that further accentuate her height and deliberate gait. These are not merely practical footwear. They are an extension of her regal bearing, adding to the imposing silhouette she presents. You might notice the carefully painted designs on the geta themselves, perhaps a tiny wisp of cloud or a delicate flower, another small detail in the grand tapestry of her presentation. This daily ritual of transformation is more than just getting ready. It's a performance in itself, a meditation on beauty and presentation. It reinforces the idea that the Warren is not just a woman, but an ideal, a living masterpiece. Every element is carefully chosen, every brushstroke precise, every layer of silk strategically placed to create an illusion of perfection. It's the ultimate form of self-branding, honed over centuries. As you observe this painstaking process, you begin to understand the immense dedication required, not just from the courtesan herself, but from the entire Akiya staff. They are all complicit in creating this illusion, this floating world of ephemeral beauty. The cost of these kimonos alone could bankrupt a lesser merchant, a testament to the profitability of the Akiya and the investment they poured into their most valuable assets, their courtesans. The Warren's room, where this transformation takes place, is also a carefully curated space. You might notice the soft light, the subtle scent of sandalwood, the presence of delicate floral arrangements in a tokonoma alcove. Every detail contributes to the atmosphere of refined elegance. It's a sanctuary before it becomes a stage. You might find yourself thinking about the sheer practicality of it all. How did they sleep with those hairstyles? How did they move so gracefully in such heavy clothing? The answers lie in years of training and an unwavering commitment to their role. It's a level of dedication that would make even the most committed modern-day fashionista pause. Imagine having to spend hours every day just getting dressed, not for a red carpet event, but for every single working night. This daily beauty routine was not just about attracting patrons. It was also a form of artistic expression, a way for the courtesan to assert her individuality within the rigid confines of her profession. While the overall style was dictated by the fashion of the floating world, each Warren would have her own subtle variations, her own signature touches, making her unique even amidst such extravagant beauty. It's like an ancient form of personal branding, but with more silk and fewer hashtags. As the sun sets and the first lanterns begin to glow outside, the transformation is complete. The Warren emerges, not just dressed, but adorned, a vision of Edo beauty, ready to preside over the evening's entertainments. Her presence alone commands attention, a testament to the hours of meticulous preparation and the collective effort that goes into crafting such an exquisite illusion. You've witnessed the making of a masterpiece, piece by meticulous piece. You've seen the elaborate daily rituals that transform a courtesan into a vision of Edo beauty. But beauty, as captivating as it is only one facet of the Warrens' allure. Now, you'll discover the true artistry that set them apart, the mastery of conversation, poetry, music, and the myriad of cultivated talents that made them intellectual companions as much as objects of desire. This was their true golden cage, the expectation of being endlessly fascinating. Imagine yourself, not as a casual observer, but now, finally, as a privileged client, having navigated the initial formal meetings and gained the Warrens' approval. You are ushered into her private chambers, a space that exudes refined elegance. The air is delicate with the scent of incense and blooming flowers in a perfectly arranged ikebana display. Soft light filters through the shoji screens, casting gentle shadows. This is not a boisterous tea house. It is a sanctuary for cultivated exchange. The Warren greets you, perhaps with a subtle, graceful bow, her movements fluid despite the weight of her kimono. Her smile is not a forced one, but a genuine expression of welcome, for she has chosen to entertain you. This first true encounter is not about physical intimacy, but about the clash of wits, the exchange of pleasantries, and the display of intellectual prowess. You find yourself feeling a peculiar blend of anticipation and slight intimidation. It's like going on a first date with someone who's a world-class debater, a renowned poet, and a classical musician, all rolled into one. Your usual pickup lines just won't cut it here. The conversation begins, light and effortless. The Warren guides it with exquisite skill, asking probing questions without being intrusive, listening intently and responding with insightful comments. She is well versed in current events, knowing the latest gossip from Edo Castle, the shifting alliances of the samurai clans, and the popular kabuki plays. She might gently inquire about your travels, your interests, or a recent poetic competition. Her knowledge is vast, her memory sharp, and her ability to recall specific details about her many patrons is legendary. Then she might pick up her shamisen. The instrument, a 3-stringed lute, is simple in its form, yet capable of producing complex and evocative melodies. Her fingers, adorned perhaps with a single elegant ring, dance over the strings, weaving a tapestry of sound that fills the room. It could be a classical piece, a melancholy ballad of lost love, or a lively tune from a popular play. Her voice, when she sings, is clear and resonant, often accompanied by her own poetic verses. You realize this isn't just entertainment. It's a performance crafted to evoke emotion and create a bond. It's like watching a private concert by a master musician who also happens to be a charming conversationalist. Beyond music, her artistic talents extend to calligraphy. She might invite you to compose a poem, and then, with fluid, practiced strokes, she would transcribe it onto a delicate scroll, her brush moving with practiced grace. Or she might compose a verse herself, her words imbued with a subtle double meaning or a poignant observation, reflecting the fleeting beauty of their world. This shared act of creation, however small, forms a connection beyond mere commerce. Historians still argue whether the courtesans' mastery of these arts was a genuine expression of their personal passions, or merely a highly polished performance designed to enhance their commercial value. It's a fascinating debate, as their lives blur the lines between genuine cultivation and professional necessity. Perhaps it was both, a necessary skill that blossomed into true artistry for many. You might be offered a game of Go or Shogi, traditional Japanese board games that require strategic thinking and patience. The Warren is likely an expert, her mind as sharp as her wit. A game with her isn't just about winning or losing. It's another opportunity for shared intellectual engagement, a test of your strategic mind against hers. You'd probably lose, but you'd enjoy every minute of it. The conversation flows easily, touching on literature, philosophy, and the aesthetics of art. She might discuss the latest literary trends, the subtle nuances of a particular poem, or the symbolism in a classical painting. Her intellect is not to be underestimated. She is as well educated, if not more so, than many of the elite men she entertains. She is a true conversationalist, capable of holding her own in any discussion, elevating the encounter beyond simple pleasure to one of profound intellectual stimulation. A quirky tidbit: high-ranking courtesans were often skilled at the tea ceremony, chanoyu, a highly formalized and spiritual art form. Imagine the delicate grace with which she would prepare and serve the frothy green tea, each movement precise and imbued with meaning. This was far from just a beverage. It was a ritual of hospitality, a moment of shared tranquility that transcended the commercial nature of their encounter. It's like having a world-class chef cook for you, but the meal is a single cup of tea, and the presentation is half the experience. She might also possess a keen understanding of fashion and aesthetics, offering insights into the latest kimono patterns, the most sought-after kanzashi, or the ideal arrangement for a garden. Her opinions on these matters were highly valued, and her personal style often set trends within Edo society. She was an influencer before the internet even existed. The art of conversation for Anwaran was a delicate dance. She had to be engaging without being overly familiar, charming without being overly flirtatious, and intelligent without being arrogant. She had to make each patron feel special, as if they were the only person in the world who truly understood her. This required an almost superhuman level of emotional intelligence and adaptability. She could shift seamlessly from discussing weighty political matters to light-hearted gossip, from reciting classical poetry to cracking a gentle, witty joke. You might observe her subtle use of body language, a slight tilt of the head, a delicate fan covering a smile, an expressive glance, all contributing to the captivating aura she projects. Every gesture is practiced, yet appears entirely natural, adding to her mystique. It's a masterclass in nonverbal communication, a silent language that speaks volumes. As the evening progresses, and perhaps a small amount of sake has been consumed, the atmosphere becomes warmer, more relaxed. The Warren might share a personal anecdote, or perhaps a humorous observation about life within Yashiwara, offering a rare glimpse behind the veil of her professional persona. These moments of genuine connection are what truly captivated her patrons, drawing them back again and again. The conversations are not merely transactional. They are an exchange of humanity, however fleeting. For the patrons, it is a chance to escape the rigid confines of their own lives and engage with a woman of extraordinary talent and intellect. For the Warren, It is an opportunity to exercise her formidable skills, to truly connect with another mind, and perhaps to find a moment of genuine understanding. It's a delicate balance, maintaining the illusion of the floating world while occasionally allowing for moments of raw, human connection. You leave the Warrens' chambers feeling not just entertained, but enriched. You have been in the presence of someone truly exceptional, a woman who has mastered not just the art of beauty, but the art of living within a world that sought to define and confine her. Her mind, her wit, and her artistry are her true treasures, shining brightly even within the gilded cage. You've witnessed the Warrens' unparalleled beauty and exquisite talents. Now, you'll turn your attention to the other side of this delicate equation, the patron. You'll understand the immense wealth, the subtle rituals, and the often lengthy pursuit required for a man to gain the coveted company of an Warren. This wasn't a casual affair. It was an investment, a performance of its own, designed to prove worth and dedication. Imagine yourself as a wealthy merchant from Osaka or a high-ranking samurai from a distant domain, arriving in Edo. You've heard tales of the Warren of Yashiwara, their beauty, their wit, their legendary grace. To spend an evening with such a woman is not merely about physical pleasure. It is a profound status symbol, a declaration of your wealth, your taste, and your influence. It's the Edo equivalent of arriving at a gala with a supermodel on your arm, except the supermodel also happens to be a poet, a musician, and a brilliant conversationalist. Your first step into Yashiwara as a potential patron of an Warren is not a direct approach. Oh no, that would be far too gauche, far too simple. Instead, you would typically begin by visiting a lower-ranked courtesan house, or perhaps a tea house within the district. This allows you to acclimatize to the atmosphere, establish yourself, and crucially, begin to build a reputation as a discerning and generous patron. It's like starting at a junior league before you can even dream of playing in the majors. You might find yourself sampling sake, enjoying some light entertainment, and subtly inquiring about the most celebrated Warren. Once you've established your presence, the real pursuit begins. To even request an audience with an Warren, you must first send a formal invitation, often accompanied by a significant gift. This gift is not just a token, it's a statement of intent and financial capability. It could be a rare piece of porcelain, a bolt of exquisite silk, or a substantial sum of money. You might spend days deliberating over the perfect gift, knowing that it will be scrutinized by the Warren and her Akhasan. It's like sending the most elaborate, expensive dating app message ever, hoping to get a swipe right. If the gift is accepted, you earn the privilege of the first meeting, known as Hikiowace or Kaike. You are ushered into the Akiya, into a formal reception room, not the Warren's private chambers. The Warren herself will appear, often seated some distance away, perhaps behind a screen or with her back slightly turned. She will be impeccably dressed, her hair a towering masterpiece. She will offer a formal greeting, but she might not even speak a word directly to you. Her role in this first encounter is to observe, to assess your demeanor, your elegance, your sincerity, and of course, your financial standing. You, the patron, are expected to engage in polite conversation with her shins or the yarite, discussing general topics, while subtly trying to impress the silent figure of the Warren. It's an agonizingly slow dance, where the most important person in the room offers only a fleeting glimpse of her true self. You might find yourself wanting to shout, "Just talk to me," but that would immediately disqualify you. This first meeting is designed to test your patience and your resolve. You are expected to be lavish in your spending on sake and food for the house, without directly engaging the Warren. You are proving your generosity and your respect for the traditions of Yashiwara. Historians still argue whether this protracted courtship ritual was a genuine expression of courtesan agency or a clever marketing strategy devised by the Akiya to maximize profits. Perhaps it was a brilliant fusion of both. If the Warren approves of you after this initial, formal encounter, you are permitted a second meeting, the Urazashiki. This time, she might sit closer, perhaps facing you directly, and might even engage you in polite conversation. Her words will be few, carefully chosen, and exquisitely polite. She will still maintain a certain distance, a veil of mystique. You might be allowed to share a cup of sake with her, but it is still largely a formal affair, focused on her artistic performances and her captivating presence. You are still paying for the privilege of her existence, not yet her full attention. It's like being allowed backstage, but only in the green room, and the star is still in character. Only after the second meeting, and again, if the Warren consents, are you granted the honor of the third meeting, the Mitsugoroshi, or 3 murders. This is the point where the Warren finally truly engages with you, revealing her full personality, her wit, and her charm. This is when the intellectual conversations about poetry, art, and philosophy truly blossom. This is when she might play her shamisen or perform a delicate dance just for you. This is also the point where a more intimate relationship might develop, including the possibility of spending the night together. The cost for these 3 encounters, including all the accompanying entertainment, gifts, and lavish expenditures on the Akiya staff, would be astronomical, often equivalent to a year's wages for a common merchant or a substantial portion of a samurai's annual stipend. A quirky tidbit: to mark the acceptance of a patron for the third meeting, a special, symbolic ritual would sometimes take place. The Warren would have a small, beautifully crafted charcoal brazier brought to her, and she would light a piece of special incense. The scent would then drift throughout the room, signaling to the entire Akiya that this patron had successfully entered her inner circle. It was a subtle yet powerful declaration, understood by everyone in the know. It was like a very fragrant, very exclusive VIP pass. The patron's pursuit was not just about spending money, it was also about demonstrating connoisseurship. To appreciate in Warren was to appreciate the highest form of Edo culture. Patrons would often compete with each other, not just for the Warren's time, but for her favor, showering her with gifts, composing poetry in her honor, and commissioning artists to paint her portrait. Her popularity was a direct reflection of her patron's influence and wealth. For the Warren herself, the selection of patrons was a crucial part of her strategy. She would carefully choose clients who were not only wealthy but also genuinely interesting, refined, and respectful. Her reputation, and thus her market value, depended on the quality of her clientele. It was a delicate balance. She needed to attract the rich, but she also had to maintain her artistic integrity and personal dignity. The relationship between Warren and her most dedicated patron could, at times, become quite deep. While it originated in commerce, genuine affection, respect, and even love could develop. These relationships, however, were always bound by the economic realities of Yashiwara. The Warren was ultimately still bound by her contract to the Akiya, and her freedom was limited. You might reflect on the societal implications of this system. For wealthy men, Yashiwara offered an escape from the rigid social structures and expectations of their own lives. Here, they could interact with women of extraordinary talent and beauty, engaging in conversations that might be impossible with their wives or other women in their social sphere. It was a place where societal roles were subtly inverted, where the woman, though confined, held immense power over the men who sought her company. The pursuit of Anwaran was therefore not just about satisfying desire. It was about participating in a sophisticated social game, a display of power, wealth, and cultural appreciation. It was a golden ladder to reach the golden cage, and for many, the climb was just as thrilling as the destination. You've explored the intricate beauty rituals and the demanding intellectual life of Anwaran, and you've understood the arduous pursuit of her patrons. Now, prepare to witness the pinnacle of her public life, the grand festivals and elaborate processions that brought the splendor of Yashiwara out into the open, transforming the streets into a vibrant stage. These events were not merely parades. They were meticulously choreographed spectacles, designed to showcase the Waran's unparalleled beauty and to captivate the collective imagination of Edo. Imagine the Nakamachi, the main thoroughfare of Yashiwara, on a clear, crisp day. The air is electric with anticipation. Today isn't just any day. It's the day of a major festival, perhaps the New Year's procession or a special celebration honoring a newly elevated Waran. The street, usually bustling with everyday activity, is now lined with eager spectators. Merchants, samurai, commoners, and even women and children who normally wouldn't set foot in the district, all vying for a glimpse of the legendary courtesans. You find yourself jostling for a good vantage point, the excitement palpable in the crowd. The most famous of these spectacles is the Waran Dachu, or the Waran procession. This wasn't a daily occurrence, but a rare and highly anticipated event, reserved for the highest-ranking courtesans. You hear the distant strains of traditional music, growing louder with each passing moment. The rhythmic beat of drums, the haunting melody of the shakuhachi flute, and the distinctive plucking of the shamisen. The sound itself is a prelude, signaling the approach of something extraordinary. And then she appears. Slowly, majestically, the Waran emerges, accompanied by her retinue. She is a vision, almost otherworldly in her grandeur. Her kimono, a masterpiece of silk embroidery, shimmers with every subtle movement, likely weighing several pounds. It's not just one kimono, it's layers upon layers, each a testament to the artistry of the weavers and embroiderers. Her hair is a towering edifice of loops and pins, adorned with dozens of gleaming kanzashi that catch the sunlight, reflecting it in 1,000 tiny sparkles. Her face, a mask of serene white, with delicate red lips and artfully drawn eyebrows, is perfectly impassive, revealing nothing of the woman beneath. It's a porcelain doll brought to magnificent, slow-motion life. Her distinctive walk is what truly sets her apart. She moves with a slow, deliberate, almost exaggerated sway, known as the Soto Hachimanji, outer 8-character walk. Each step is an outward arc, placing her high-platformed geta down with a resounding thump. This walk, perfected through years of training, is not practical. It's a performance in itself, highlighting her elegance and the sheer weight of her attire, which prevents her from moving quickly. You might find yourself transfixed by the rhythm of her steps, each one a testament to her discipline and grace. It's like watching a figure skater perform a complex routine in slow motion, but on wooden stilts. You might even chuckle at the thought of trying to replicate it yourself. You'd probably trip and face-plant within 3 steps. The Warren is not alone. She is flanked by her Kamuro and Shinzo, dressed in miniature versions of her elaborate attire. Their small figures a charming contrast to her commanding presence. They hold her kimono, or small parasols, adding to the visual splendor of the procession. Behind her, or sometimes flanking her, are male attendants known as haken or teikamachi, essentially male geisha who served as entertainers, wits, and companions. They might crack jokes or play small instruments, adding a lively counterpoint to the Warren's dignified silence. The Warren Dachu was more than a parade of beauty. It was a demonstration of the Akiya's wealth and prestige. The cost of outfitting and Warren for such an event, from her multi-layered kimonos to her elaborate hair ornaments and the costumes of her retinue, was immense. This spectacle was a powerful form of advertising, showcasing the caliber of the courtesans and attracting new, wealthy patrons to Yashiwara. It was like a living, breathing luxury brand fashion show, but with centuries of tradition behind it. Historians still argue whether these public processions served primarily as a means of commercial promotion or as a rare opportunity for the courtesans to exert their agency and visibility within Edo society. Was it a moment of empowerment, allowing them to be admired for their artistry, or simply another elaborate form of display for consumption? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a complex interplay of forces. A quirky tidbit: the Warren would often wear a special, tall, multi-layered hairstyle for these processions, adorned with so many kanzashi that the total weight on her head could be upwards of several pounds. It was a literal crown of beauty, but one that demanded immense physical endurance and careful balancing. Imagine the neck muscles required for that. It puts your most elaborate wedding up to shame. The crowd reacts with a mixture of awe, admiration, and hushed reverence. Whispers ripple through the onlookers, identifying the Warren by name, marveling at her beauty, and speculating on her latest patron. For many, this was their only chance to witness such opulence and grace firsthand. It was a moment of escapism, a brief immersion in a world of unattainable luxury and beauty. Other festivals within Yashiwara also provided opportunities for public display. There were seasonal festivals celebrating cherry blossoms or autumn leaves, where courtesans would participate in more informal parades, often dressed in kimonos that reflected the season's motifs. These were lighter, more festive occasions, but still showcased the district's unique cultural offerings. These public displays served to reinforce the mystique of Yashiwara. By offering glimpses of unparalleled beauty and artistry, they lured patrons deeper into its world, promising an experience that transcended mere entertainment. They were meticulously planned events, each detail considered, from the route of the procession to the exact timing of the music, creating an immersive sensory experience. The impact of these parades extended beyond the gates of Yashiwara. They influenced fashion trends, inspired kabuki plays, and fueled the popular woodblock prints, ukiyo-e, that depicted the beauties of the floating world. The Warren became icons, their images widely circulated, cementing their status as celebrities of their time. You might have seen their likenesses on fans, screens, or even everyday items, much like modern-day pop stars on merchandise. As the procession slowly winds its way down Nakamachi, the Warren maintains her regal composure, her gaze distant, unacknowledging of the throngs of admirers. It's a testament to her training and her role as an embodiment of idealized beauty. She is not interacting. She is simply being, allowing herself to be seen, admired, and desired. Her silent presence speaks volumes. You watch as the last glimpse of her magnificent kimono disappears around a corner, leaving behind a lingering scent of expensive perfume and a collective sigh from the crowd. The street slowly returns to its usual hum, but the memory of the spectacle remains, burned into the minds of those who witnessed it. These festivals and parades were fleeting moments of public grandeur, carefully constructed illusions that momentarily blurred the line between the artificial world of Yashiwara and the reality of Edo. They were, in essence, the original viral moments, generating buzz and drawing people into the golden cage. You've witnessed the public spectacle of the Warin Dachu, where courtesans appeared as untouchable goddesses. But what is life truly like for these women when the parades are over, the patrons have departed, and the lights of the floating world begin to dim for the night? You'll now step behind the glittering facade to explore the paradoxical nature of their existence, celebrated within Yashiwara, yet fundamentally confined and often stigmatized by the wider Edo society. As the late hours dwindle and the last of the wealthy patrons leave the Akiya, a different rhythm settles over Yashiwara. The bustling Nakamachi quiets down, and the sounds of revelry are replaced by the murmur of the house staff preparing for the next day. For the courtesans, especially the high-ranking Warin, this is often when their personal time, however brief, truly begins. You might imagine her unwinding, perhaps removing her elaborate hairpins with a sigh of relief, or simply enjoying a moment of quiet solitude in her lavish, yet confining, room. It's like a rock star coming off stage, still wired from the performance, but craving the quiet anonymity of her hotel room. Despite the immense wealth and luxury that surrounded them, courtesans were, in essence, bound by contract to their Akiya. Remember that accumulating debt from their childhood training and upkeep. That debt was the invisible chain, keeping them tethered to Yashiwara. They couldn't simply walk out. Their freedom was an illusion, contingent on either a wealthy patron buying out their contract, a rare event known as mizuage for lower ranks, or a more formalized release for Warin, or working long enough to earn their freedom, which was exceptionally difficult given the constant expenses. Historians still argue whether the courtesan's economic situation, particularly the debt system, was a form of indentured servitude or a complex business arrangement that offered a path to financial independence for some. The answer, as always, is nuanced and deeply uncomfortable. The physical confinement was palpable. Yashiwara was a walled district, with only one guarded entrance, the Amen gate you first observed. Courtesans were rarely, if ever, allowed to leave its confines without explicit permission from their Akasen, and usually only for very specific monitored reasons, such as visiting a doctor, a funeral, or a significant family event. Even then, they would be accompanied by house staff. You might see a courtesan gazing longingly out of a latticed window, perhaps watching a bird fly freely, a poignant symbol of her own restricted life. It's like living in the world's most beautiful, exclusive resort, but you're never allowed to check out. Socially, the courtesans occupied a peculiar position. Within Yashiwara, and Warin was revered, a cultural icon. She commanded immense respect and wielded significant power over her immediate environment. She was a trendsetter, a poet, a musician, and a conversationalist par excellence. However, outside the gates, in the broader Edo society, her profession carried a heavy stigma. While samurai and merchants flocked to Yashiwara, publicly associating with a courtesan, especially in a permanent way, could damage a man's reputation. Women from respectable society were generally forbidden from entering Yashiwara, and courtesans, despite their immense cultural influence, were often seen as being outside the moral boundaries of polite society. It was a peculiar double standard, where their beauty and talent were admired, but their lives were deemed impure. This duality meant that forming genuine, lasting relationships outside the district was nearly impossible. Marriages were generally out of the question unless a patron bought out their contract and legitimized them, a rare occurrence. Their friendships were largely confined to other courtesans, the house staff, and their trusted attendants. You might witness a quiet moment between two courtesans, sharing a cup of tea, their conversation filled with an unspoken understanding of their shared fate. These bonds, forged in confinement, were often deep and vital for emotional survival. A quirky tidbit: despite the stigma, some high-ranking courtesans were incredibly well-educated, often far more so than many noblewomen of the time. They were expected to be conversant in classical literature, poetry, and philosophy, sometimes even hosting private salons where intellectual discussions flourished. This intellectual prowess was a key part of their allure, demonstrating that their value extended far beyond mere physical beauty. It was a stark contrast to the common perception, showing that even in a gilded cage, minds could soar. The physical demands of their profession were also immense. The elaborate hairstyles and heavy kimonos worn for hours, the constant performance, the late nights, and the early mornings all took a toll on their bodies. Many suffered from chronic ailments, from back pain to skin issues from the lead-based makeup. You might notice the subtle slump of a shoulder or the weary rub of an eye, betraying the physical toll beneath the layers of glamour. Yet within these constraints, some courtesans found ways to exert a surprising degree of agency. They could choose their preferred patrons, especially the Warren, influence trends, and even in rare cases, amass enough personal wealth to gain their freedom. Their artistry, their wit, and their intelligence were their tools for survival, and for some, for subtle defiance. They often fostered a strong sense of community within their Akiya, relying on each other for support and camaraderie. You might see an Warren writing a letter, her hand moving gracefully over the paper. These letters, often coded or filled with poetic allusions, were a lifeline to the outside world or to a discreet lover. They reveal an inner life rich with emotion, yearning, and sometimes quiet despair. They were human beings, remember, not just beautiful objects. They experienced love, loss, joy, and sorrow, just like anyone else, but within a uniquely structured existence. The life beyond the gates, the life they could only dream of or occasionally glimpse, was one of perceived freedom and normalcy. Yet, for many who spent their entire lives in Yashiwara, the outside world could be terrifyingly unfamiliar. They knew the rules of the floating world, the nuances of its etiquette, and the expectations of its patrons. The mundane realities of marriage, domestic life, or financial independence outside the district were often completely alien concepts. Historians still debate the extent to which courtesans internalized their roles, seeing Yashiwara as their true home, or whether a constant yearning for outside life persisted. As the first faint light of dawn begins to touch the rooftops of Yashiwara, painting the sky in soft hues of lavender and rose, you reflect on the lives lived within this paradoxical realm. The courtesans, glittering figures in their golden cages, navigated a world of exquisite beauty and profound limitation. Their existence was a testament to the complex social fabric of Edo Japan, a world that both celebrated and confined its most dazzling women. They were stars, but stars that could never leave their carefully constructed constellation. You've explored the grand spectacles and the subtle confines of the courtesan's life. Now, you'll delve into the tender, often heartbreaking realm of their emotional lives, the secret loves, the profound losses, and the poignant, coded letters that served as lifelines in a world designed for fleeting connections. It's a reminder that beneath the layers of silk and white makeup, these were women with human hearts. Imagine a quiet evening in Warren's chambers, the last patron having departed. The elaborate hairpins have been removed, the heavy kimono exchanged for a simpler nightgown. She sits by a flickering lamp, perhaps sipping a cup of herbal tea. This is when the loneliness can creep in, the quiet hum of the empty room amplifying unspoken yearnings. Despite being surrounded by people, the emotional isolation of a courtesan could be profound. Her interactions were largely transactional, her beauty and talent offered for a fee. True intimacy, built on genuine affection and trust, was a rare and precious commodity. Yet love, in its myriad forms, found its way even into the gilded cages of Yashiwara. Courtesans, like anyone else, experienced attraction, affection, and deep emotional bonds. These relationships could be with fellow courtesans, with male attendants who shared their confined existence, or most famously with their dedicated patrons. Such romances, however, were fraught with peril and often ended in heartbreak. A common scenario was a deep, unspoken bond developing between Warren and a particularly devoted patron. He would visit her regularly, showering her with gifts, but more importantly, offering companionship, intellectual stimulation, and genuine affection. For the Warren, this patron might become a window to the outside world, a confidant, and perhaps the closest she would come to a true emotional partner. You might imagine them sharing quiet moments, discussing poetry or dreams, moments where the commercial aspect of their relationship faded into the background. It's like a secret garden blooming in the middle of a bustling marketplace. However, these relationships were almost always destined for tragedy. The patron, if he were a samurai or a wealthy merchant, typically had a family outside Yashiwara and could not legitimize a courtesan as his wife without severe social repercussions, potentially even disinheritance. The Warren herself was bound by her debt and contract to the Akiya. For a patron to redeem a courtesan and take her as his wife required an immense sum of money, often enough to buy out her entire contract and compensate the Akiya for its investment. This act, known as messiage or mizuage for lower-ranked courtesans, was exceedingly rare and usually only possible for the wealthiest and most unconventional men. When such a redemption did occur, it was a moment of bittersweet triumph. The courtesan would leave Yashiwara, often in a simple, unadorned kimono, symbolizing her new, ungilded status. But she would often leave behind friends, a familiar routine, and the only world she had ever truly known. And even then, acceptance into mainstream society could be difficult due to the lingering stigma. Historians still argue whether instances of patrons buying out courtesans for marriage were truly expressions of love or just another form of ownership transfer within the complex social structures of Edo. The motivations were likely a mix of both, reflecting the ambiguities of human relationships. More common were relationships that remained clandestine, expressed through subtle gestures, stolen moments, and most famously, through letters. You might imagine Warren carefully penning a letter late at night, her words filled with a longing she couldn't openly express. These letters were often written in a highly poetic, elusive style, using metaphors of flowers, seasons, or classical literature to convey emotions that could not be explicitly stated. They were often delivered by trusted camuro or sympathetic male attendants, becoming vital conduits for emotional exchange. It was like sending highly intricate, literary emojis, but with much higher stakes. Sometimes, a courtesan might even resort to cutting off a lock of her hair, or even a fingernail, to send to her beloved as a powerful symbol of her devotion, a pledge of sincerity. These acts, known as yubaikiri, were extreme expressions of commitment, carrying a gravitas that transcended mere words. It's a quirky tidbit, but it speaks volumes about the intensity of their emotions and the lengths to which they would go to prove their love in a world that denied them such agency. The pain of loss was also a constant companion. The departure of a beloved patron, perhaps due to financial ruin, social pressure, or simply a waning interest, could be devastating. Courtesans often formed deep attachments to their kamuro and shinzo, guiding them, teaching them, and becoming surrogate mothers. The loss of a young apprentice, perhaps to illness or another house, would be a profound blow. Death, too, was a stark reality. The lives of courtesans were often tragically short due to illness, the rigors of their profession, or, in desperate cases, suicide when hope seemed lost. You might hear whispers of a particular courtesan who pined for a samurai she could never truly have. Her poetry became imbued with melancholy, her songs with a deeper sadness. These personal sorrows were often sublimated into their artistic performances, adding layers of depth and authenticity to their art, turning private pain into public beauty. The Akio itself, while a place of commerce, also fostered a unique form of family. The Akasan could be a stern taskmaster, but also a protective mother figure. The courtesans themselves formed sisterhoods, supporting each other through rivalries, heartbreaks, and the relentless demands of their profession. These bonds of shared experience provided crucial emotional solace in a world that offered little else in terms of genuine connection. You might visualize a small wooden box, carefully hidden beneath floorboards, containing a collection of faded letters, a dried flower, a small, intricate hairpin, tokens of forgotten loves and whispered promises. These were the true treasures of a courtesan's heart, kept away from the public gaze, private solace in a life that was constantly on display. As the moon casts long shadows across the empty streets of Yashiwara, you reflect on the human cost of the floating world's beauty. For all the glamour, the lavish kimonos, and the intellectual pursuits, there was a profound emotional sacrifice. The courtesans, constrained by their contracts and societal norms, navigated a complex landscape of love and loss, finding moments of genuine connection where they could, and expressing their deepest emotions in hushed tones, coded letters, and haunting melodies. Their hearts, though often aching, beat fiercely within their gilded cages, yearning for a freedom that was almost always just out of reach. You've explored the emotional landscape of Yashiwara, the quiet loves and poignant losses. Now, let's peel back another layer and confront the undeniable engine that drove the floating world: the business of pleasure. This was a highly sophisticated, meticulously managed industry, where beauty was the primary commodity, and every aspect of a courtesan's life, from her initial entry to her daily expenses, was meticulously accounted for. Imagine, if you will, the Akasan, the proprietress of an Akiya, seated before her account books. She is not merely a caretaker. She is a shrewd businesswoman navigating a competitive market. Her success and the livelihood of everyone in her house depends on her ability to manage her investments, attract wealthy patrons, and ensure the continuous flow of revenue. This isn't just a house. It's a meticulously organized enterprise with a complex financial structure underpinning its glittering facade. It's like a very exclusive, very high-risk startup where the product is human charm and talent, and the overheads are astronomical. At the heart of the business model was the concept of debt. As you recall, most girls entered Yashiwara because their families were forced to sell them. The sum paid to the family for the child, known as Mijin advance money, was the initial debt. To this, the Akiya added all expenses: food, lodging, medical care, clothing, especially the lavish kimonos and accessories, education in arts and etiquette, and even the salaries of the kami-yui, hairdressers, and other staff who catered to the courtesans. This debt accumulated rapidly, often reaching astronomical figures, making it virtually impossible for a courtesan to pay it off from her earnings alone. You might see a small ledger, meticulously kept, detailing every expense, every cost, every penny owed, a silent tally of a life. A courtesan's earnings were primarily derived from the fees paid by patrons for her time and services. However, these fees did not go directly to the courtesan. Instead, they went to the Akiya. The courtesan herself received only a small allowance, a tiny fraction of what she brought in. This system ensured that the Akiya recouped its initial investment and continued to profit, while the courtesan remained perpetually indebted. It was a cycle designed to keep her within the system. Historians still argue whether this debt system was a predatory practice or a pragmatic necessity, given the enormous investment required to train and maintain a high-ranking courtesan. It's a debate that touches on the very definition of labor and exploitation in Edo Japan. The price of a courtesan's company varied dramatically based on her rank. An evening with a top-tier warren was extraordinarily expensive, often equivalent to the annual income of a skilled craftsman or several years' wages for a common laborer. This exorbitant cost reflected not just her beauty and talents, but also the Akiya's investment in her and the exclusivity of her position. It was a clear demonstration of the patron's wealth and status. You might see a patron casually tossing a small bag of gold coins onto a table, an almost insignificant gesture for him, but a fortune to most. Beyond the direct fees for the courtesan's time, patrons were expected to spend lavishly on other aspects of the Akiya's offerings. This included expensive sake, elaborate meals, and entertainment provided by other performers like musicians or dancers. Gifts to the courtesan herself were also a crucial part of the economy. These might include bolts of fine silk, intricate hairpins, or even parcels of land. While these gifts were technically for the courtesan, They ultimately benefited the Akiya as they increased her perceived value and attracted more high-spending patrons. It was a ripple effect of luxury. The Akiya also operated various ancillary businesses within its walls. There were shops selling specialized cosmetics, perfumes, and luxurious accessories tailored to the courtesans and their clientele. Tea houses and smaller eateries also thrived, catering to visitors who might not be able to afford a top courtesan but still wanted to experience the atmosphere of Yashiwara. You might see a smaller, bustling shop, its shelves lined with lacquered boxes and delicate fans, all contributing to the district's vibrant economy. The competition between Akiya was fierce. Each house strived to acquire the most beautiful and talented young girls, to train them meticulously, and to elevate them to the highest ranks. The reputation of an Akiya rested entirely on the fame and allure of its courtesans. This led to lavish spending on training, marketing, like the elaborate Waren Dachu, and the maintenance of their premises to attract the most affluent clientele. It was a constant arms race of beauty and prestige. A quirky tidbit: to keep track of a courtesan's specific appointments and her availability, Akiya often used an intricate system of wooden tags or small, decorated paper slips. Each tag might represent a specific courtesan or a specific time slot, allowing the Yarite to manage bookings with remarkable precision. It was an analog booking system that would make modern reservation software look simple, but it was incredibly effective. The concept of Aja, rendezvous houses, also played a role in the Yashiwara economy. These were separate establishments where patrons could meet courtesans from different Akiya. The Aja would charge a substantial fee for the use of their private rooms and for providing food and drink. This system allowed for more flexibility and privacy for the patrons, while still ensuring that both the Akiya and the Aja profited from the encounter. It was a complex network of businesses, all interconnected and interdependent. The sheer profitability of Yashiwara was immense. It attracted capital from wealthy merchants and even some samurai who invested in Akiya or lent money to proprietors. It was seen as a lucrative, if morally ambiguous, investment. The flow of money within the district was constant, fueling the local economy and contributing significantly to Edo's overall prosperity. However, for the courtesans themselves, the financial reality was often grim. The dream of paying off their debt and gaining freedom, known as Ajamai, was rarely realized. Many would spend their entire lives within the district, eventually becoming Yarite or low-ranking house staff as their youth and beauty faded. The system was designed to perpetuate their service, making true financial independence an elusive goal for most. You might observe a Yarite sternly reviewing the day's accounts, her brow furrowed in concentration. Every penny counted. Every interaction was a potential source of revenue. The business of pleasure in Yashiwara was a finely tuned machine, running on the allure of its women and the insatiable desires of its patrons. It was a system that generated immense wealth for a few, while for many, it was a lifelong commitment with little hope of escape. The economic infrastructure of Yashiwara was as intricate as the patterns on an Waran's kimono. It was a fascinating, often brutal, testament to the ingenuity of Edo period entrepreneurs and the enduring human desire for both pleasure and profit. You see the glint of coins, the rustle of silk, the ledger entries, all part of the continuous churn of the floating world's unique and powerful economy. You've delved into the complex economics and intimate emotional lives within Yashiwara. Now, let's peel back another layer and reveal the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, currents of rivalry and resentment that coursed through the floating world. This glittering society, for all its outward elegance, was also a crucible of human ambition, competition, and the occasional clash of egos. Imagine yourself as an astute observer in the bustling corridors of an Akiya, or perhaps a quiet corner of a busy tea house where courtesans gathered briefly between engagements. You'd notice the hushed whispers, the averted glances, the subtle shifts in demeanor when certain names were mentioned. While the overarching goal was to maintain an illusion of harmonious beauty, beneath the surface, a constant competition for patrons, prestige, and influence was always simmering. It's like a very high-stakes reality TV show, but with centuries of tradition and far more expensive wardrobes. The most intense rivalries typically occurred between courtesans of similar rank or those vying for promotion. A young Shins might resent an older, more established courtesan who seemed to effortlessly command the attention of wealthy clients. A courtesan seeking to become an Warren would naturally view the current Warren of her house, or rival houses, as obstacles to her ascent. This competition wasn't always malicious. Sometimes it was simply the inherent nature of a system built on individual allure and achievement. You might see a fleeting expression of envy cross a junior courtesan's face as an Warren glides past, her presence radiating an almost unbearable perfection. These rivalries manifested in various ways. Courtesans might subtly try to outdo each other in their artistic performances, striving for more exquisite dances, more poignant poetry, or more captivating shamisen melodies. They would meticulously observe each other's fashion choices, quickly adopting or subtly improving upon popular kimono designs or hairpin arrangements to maintain their edge. It was a constant sartorial arms race, where staying ahead meant staying relevant. Historians still argue whether these rivalries primarily fostered artistic excellence or perpetuated a vicious cycle of competition that undermined true camaraderie among courtesans. Gossip, of course, was a powerful weapon. Whispers about a rival's declining beauty, her perceived rudeness to a patron, or even rumors about her personal life could spread quickly through the district, potentially damaging her reputation and, consequently, her earnings. The Yarite and Aucassin had to manage these internal dynamics carefully, ensuring that competition didn't spiral into open conflict that could disrupt the house's business. You might notice a Yarite giving a stern look to a gossiping Shinzo, a silent warning against sowing discord. Patrons themselves could sometimes fuel these rivalries. A wealthy client, seeking to flaunt his influence or simply to amuse himself, might pit courtesans against each other, showering one with gifts while pointedly ignoring another. This could create immense pressure and resentment within the Akiya, forcing courtesans to navigate complex social games beyond their artistic duties. It's like patrons playing a very expensive, very personal game of favorites. A quirky tidbit: some courtesans would subtly try to sabotage their rivals' elaborate hairstyles before a big event. A loosened pin here, a misplaced comb there, seemingly minor acts that could delay a rival's appearance or compromise her flawless presentation, giving another courtesan an edge. Imagine the sheer pettiness and precision required for such a subtle act of sabotage, all hidden beneath layers of elegance. It just goes to show, some things never change, even in the floating world. Resentment could also arise from the hierarchy itself. Lower-ranked courtesans, working longer hours for less pay and with less prestige, might feel a deep sense of injustice towards the privileged lives of the Warren. While the Warren might have endured the same grueling training, her current ease and status could be a source of quiet bitterness for those still struggling to climb the ladder. You might see a younger courtesan cleaning a senior's room, her movements perhaps a little too forceful, a silent expression of her frustration. Beyond the courtesans, resentments could also exist between the Akia themselves. Each house competed for the best apprentices, the wealthiest patrons, and the most celebrated Warren. This led to fierce, albeit often covert, competition for talent and market share. There were stories of houses attempting to poach promising Kamuro or trying to lure away a rival's most loyal patron. The business of pleasure was, after all, still a business, and profit often trumped polite decorum. The male entertainers, the Hakan or Teikamachi, also navigated a complex social landscape. While they were witty companions and performers, they often existed in the shadow of the courtesans. They might feel resentment at their auxiliary role, or conversely, form loyalties with specific courtesans, becoming their trusted allies in the internal politics of the house. Despite these undercurrents, there was also a remarkable degree of solidarity. The courtesans, particularly those within the same Akia, often formed strong bonds. They understood each other's struggles, the pressures of their profession, and the confinement of their lives. These sisterhoods provided emotional support, advice, and a sense of belonging in a world that often dehumanized them. You might witness a quiet moment of comfort shared between two courtesans, one offering a sympathetic hand to another, a brief respite from the constant performance. The Akhassan played a crucial role in managing these rivalries. A wise proprietress would understand that outright conflict could harm the house's reputation and profitability. She would employ various strategies, from subtle mediation to firm discipline, to maintain a semblance of order and harmony, ensuring that the wheels of business continued to turn smoothly. She was the ultimate manager of complex personalities, a skill that transcends eras. Ultimately, the rivalries and resentments within Yashiwara were an intrinsic part of its human ecosystem. They were a reflection of ambition, survival, and the inherent competition in a system where one's worth was constantly on display and measured by external validation. While the floating world projected an image of flawless harmony, beneath the exquisite surface, the passions and struggles of human nature were always at play, adding another layer of complexity to the lives lived within those gilded cages. You've navigated the complex social landscape of Yashiwara, with its rivalries and economic undercurrents. Now, you'll encounter a parallel yet distinct world that often causes confusion: the realm of the geisha. You'll learn to differentiate between the roles, skills, and social standing of courtesans and the emerging geisha, understanding why they were fundamentally different despite both inhabiting the entertainment districts of Edo. Imagine yourself walking through a different district in Edo, perhaps the Hanazagai or the Jin district in Kyoto. The atmosphere here is subtly distinct from Yashiwara. While still lively, it feels less overtly opulent, more focused on the subtle arts of entertainment rather than the blatant display of beauty for sale. You hear the delicate strumming of a shamisen, perhaps a little more refined, a little less mournful than some of the melodies from Yashiwara. The primary distinction between a geisha and a courtesan lies in their purpose. A courtesan, as you've seen, was fundamentally a sex worker, albeit one highly skilled in arts and conversation. Her primary service was to provide sexual intimacy, in addition to entertainment. Her beauty, her artistic talents, and her wit were all leveraged to attract and retain wealthy patrons who paid for her company, including sexual favors. She was, in essence, a high-class prostitute who also happened to be a brilliant entertainer. A geisha, on the other hand, was purely an entertainer. The word geisha literally means person of art. Her role was to provide sophisticated companionship, conversation, music, dance, and games, but not sexual services. While she cultivated an air of allure and charm, her artistry was her sole profession. She was a master performer, a captivating conversationalist, and a connoisseur of culture, but her body was not for sale. You might observe a geisha pouring sake for her clients, engaging them in witty banter, her movements graceful and refined, but without the underlying implication of intimacy that characterized a courtesan's interaction. It's like the difference between a concert pianist and a pop star who also models. Both are artists, but their core business models are worlds apart. The training pathways for geisha and courtesans also diverged significantly. While both started young and underwent rigorous artistic training, the geisha's education focused exclusively on the performing arts and social etiquette. They learned to play various instruments, master classical dances, excel in tea ceremony, and develop sharp wit and extensive knowledge of literature and current affairs. They did not learn the specific protocols of sexual engagement or the elaborate, multi-layered dressing rituals of the warren. Historians still argue whether the geisha emerged as a reaction against the overt commercialism of Yashiwara or simply as a natural evolution of performing arts in Edo. Their appearance, while still elegant, was less ostentatious than a courtesan's. Geisha wore less elaborate hairstyles and kimonos, often with the obi tied at the back, like married women, to signify their non-sexual role. Their makeup, while still refined, was less heavy and less mask-like than the courtesan's thick white foundation. You might notice a geisha's more natural, yet still impeccably styled, hair, adorned with fewer, simpler hairpins. It's a subtle but important visual cue, immediately understandable to anyone in Edo. A quirky tidbit: in the early days, some geisha were actually men. These male geisha, known as haken or teikamachi, were witty entertainers, storytellers, and drummers who often accompanied courtesans. As the profession evolved, it became predominantly female, but the male geisha laid some of the groundwork for the performing arts focus. So if you ever hear male geisha, it's not a historical anomaly, but part of the tradition. The social standing of geisha was also different. While they were still part of the floating world of entertainment, they carried less of the social stigma associated with prostitution. Geisha often had more freedom of movement than courtesans and could eventually leave their profession to marry, although this was still not common. Their contracts were generally less binding than those of courtesans, and their debts were often smaller, as they didn't require the same lavish investments in clothing and upkeep. The business model for geisha houses, or akiya, though sometimes the same term was used, the geisha akiya was distinct, was based purely on performance fees. Clients would book a geisha for private banquets, tea parties, or as companions for social gatherings. The geisha would entertain with her music, dance, and conversation, and her earnings would come from these fees. There was no debt for sexual services component in her contract. You might see a geisha gracefully performing a delicate dance, her movements telling a story, her focus entirely on her art. The relationships between geisha and their clients were often more complex and enduring, based on mutual respect and intellectual connection rather than transactional intimacy. While personal relationships and even love could develop, they were not the expected or primary service. This allowed for a different kind of rapport to form, one built on shared cultural appreciation and genuine camaraderie. You might compare the two through the eyes of an Edo gentleman. A visit to Yashiwara was for an experience of opulent beauty and forbidden pleasure. A visit to a geisha house was for refined entertainment, intellectual companionship, and the enjoyment of sophisticated art. Both offered an escape from the mundane, but through different means and with different implications. Historians still argue whether the rise of the geisha ultimately contributed to the decline of the courtesan system by offering an alternative, less stigmatized form of entertainment, or if their evolution was largely independent. The reality is likely a blend. While they coexisted for centuries, the geisha eventually surpassed the courtesan in societal acceptance and longevity, particularly as societal norms shifted. As you consider these differences, you realize that the world of Edo entertainment was far from monolithic. It was a diverse ecosystem, catering to different desires and embodying different societal values. The courtesan, in her gilded cage, was a symbol of Edo's material excess and its fascination with unattainable beauty. The geisha, in her understated elegance, represented the Edo people's deep appreciation for artistic refinement and cultivated companionship. You observe the subtle movements of a geisha serving tea, her smile genuine, her eyes sparkling with intelligence. She is not a silent, statuesque figure like the Warren in procession. She is an active participant, an engaging presence. This distinction, though subtle to the modern eye, was crystal clear in Edo. One was a woman of pleasure and art, the other, purely a person of art. And in that simple difference lay worlds of societal meaning, personal freedom, and historical legacy. You've grasped the fundamental differences between courtesans and geisha. Now, let's immerse ourselves in another defining characteristic of the floating world, one that permeated every interaction, every gesture, and every moment: the meticulous adherence to ceremony. This wasn't just about good manners. It was a complex system of rituals and protocols that governed everything from a simple greeting to a lavish banquet, adding layers of meaning and mystique to every encounter. Imagine entering an akiya as a patron, even for a casual visit. Your arrival itself is met with a specific sequence of courtesies. The yarite would greet you with a profound bow, her voice a carefully modulated whisper. Even the way you removed your sandals and were ushered into a waiting area followed an unspoken choreography. This immediate immersion in ritual was designed to transport you from the informal bustle of Edo into a realm where every detail was perfected, where time seemed to slow down to accommodate elegance. It's like stepping into a highly theatrical play where everyone knows their lines and every movement is rehearsed. The tea ceremony, chanoyu, while perhaps more commonly associated with geisha, was also a highly valued skill among high-ranking courtesans. You might observe an Warren performing this ancient ritual with exquisite grace. Every movement, from the purification of the utensils to the whisking of the matcha, is deliberate, meditative, and imbued with symbolic meaning. The way she holds the delicate teacup, the precise angle of her pour, the serene expression on her face all contribute to an atmosphere of tranquility and refined hospitality. It's a moment of shared quietude, a profound connection forged through ritual, completely transcending the commercial aspect of the encounter. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony practiced in Yashiwara retained its spiritual essence or became primarily a performance art designed to impress patrons. Perhaps it was a delicate balance, where genuine mastery met the demands of entertainment. Consider the act of receiving gifts. For a courtesan, this wasn't simply unwrapping a present. The way a gift was presented by the patron and the way it was received by the courtesan was a highly ritualized exchange. She would express gratitude with precise bows and carefully chosen words, perhaps even composing an impromptu poem of thanks. The gift itself might then be displayed in her room as a mark of honor, but its acceptance was less about the material item and more about the respect and appreciation it symbolized. Dining with a courtesan was another arena for elaborate ceremony. The presentation of food was an art form in itself, with dishes meticulously arranged to appeal to both the eye and the palate. The pouring of sake, the exchange of cups, the toasts, all followed specific protocols. You wouldn't simply gulp down your sake, you would sip it, appreciating its nuance while engaging in polite conversation. The courtesans would subtly guide the flow of the meal, ensuring that conversation remained lively and pleasant without becoming overly familiar. It's like attending a Michelin-starred banquet where the etiquette is as exquisite as the food. Even seemingly casual conversations were steeped in layers of etiquette. The use of honorifics, the careful choice of vocabulary depending on the social standing of the patron, the art of indirect speech, and the subtle use of allusion in their witty banter, all were part of the learned ceremony. A direct question might be considered crude. A polite inquiry, delicately phrased, would elicit a far more engaging response. You'd find yourself constantly aware of your own speech, striving to match the effortless elegance of your hostess. A quirky tidbit: to ensure that conversations remained polite and focused, some akiya employed a subtle signal system. If a patron became overly boisterous or inappropriate, a shinzo might subtly place a small, intricately folded paper fan between the patron and the courtesan, a silent, yet universally understood, signal to moderate his behavior. It was a remarkably genteel way of maintaining decorum without causing direct offense. It's the Edo equivalent of giving someone the side-eye, but with far more class. The ceremonies extended to farewells as well. The departure of a patron involved another series of bows, expressions of thanks, and promises of future visits. The courtesan would often accompany him to the entrance of her chambers, sometimes even to the street, a final gesture of respect and hospitality. These rituals reinforced the idea that every interaction, from beginning to end, was a structured performance, a carefully orchestrated dance of social graces. The world of ceremony within Yashiwara also served a crucial purpose. It created a barrier, a layer of formality that helped to maintain the courtesan's mystique and control. By adhering to strict protocols, the courtesan could keep a certain emotional distance, preventing patrons from becoming overly familiar or making inappropriate demands. The rituals provided a framework for interaction that was both alluring and protective. You might observe a kamuro practicing a specific way to carry a tray, or a shinzo meticulously folding a napkin. Every member of the Akiya staff was trained in these ceremonies, ensuring a seamless and consistently elegant experience for the patrons. This collective dedication to ritual contributed to the overall atmosphere of refined luxury that defined Yashiwara. Historians still argue whether the extensive ceremonial practices in Yashiwara primarily served to elevate the courtesans' status as cultural icons, or to provide a veneer of respectability over the underlying commercial transactions. It's a fascinating paradox, where highly stylized forms of interaction both masked and, perhaps, dignified the nature of their profession. As you step back from this meticulous world of ceremony, you gain a deeper appreciation for the artistry involved in every facet of the courtesan's life. It wasn't just about beauty or talent or even business. It was about the cultivation of an entire way of being, a life lived within a framework of exquisite ritual. Every bow, every sip of tea, every carefully chosen word was a part of a larger performance, transforming the everyday into the extraordinary, turning encounters into ceremonies, and making the fleeting moments of the floating world utterly unforgettable. You've explored the meticulously crafted world of Yashiwara, its ceremonies, and its unique economy. But what about those who yearned for a life beyond the gilded cage? Now, you'll hear the poignant tales of escape attempts, the desperate gambles for freedom, and the rare successes that illuminated a path, however narrow, out of the floating world, alongside the more common, tragic failures. Imagine a restless night within an Akiya. The sounds of the district have finally faded, and the courtesans are in their rooms. But for one, sleep does not come easily. Perhaps she's a Shinzo, still young, still dreaming of the life she knew before being sold. Or maybe she's an older courtesan, tired of the endless performance, the constant debt, and the unfulfilled promises. The desire for freedom, for a simple life, burns fiercely within her. This isn't just about walking out a door. It's about escaping a meticulously constructed system of control. It's like trying to break out of a maximum security prison, but one where the guards are polite and the cells are exquisitely decorated. The most straightforward, yet rarest, path to freedom was misiage or mizuage, when a patron, or sometimes a family member who had come into unexpected wealth, would pay off the courtesan's entire debt to the Akiya. This included her original purchase price, all her accumulated expenses, and often a substantial severance fee to the house. This sum was often astronomical, equivalent to a fortune. You can imagine the immense joy, and perhaps also the trepidation, of a courtesan whose debt was finally settled. She would typically leave Yashiwara in a simple, unadorned kimono, symbolizing her return to a normal life. It was a walk of quiet liberation, often observed by her fellow courtesans with a mixture of envy and genuine happiness. Historians still argue whether the phenomenon of misiage represented a true path to liberation, or merely a transfer of ownership from one man to another. The agency of the courtesan in these transactions remains a point of scholarly debate. However, such redemptions were incredibly rare. Most courtesans lacked such a wealthy or committed benefactor. This led some to contemplate more desperate measures: escape. The physical barriers of Yashiwara were formidable: high walls and the heavily guarded Amen Gate, which was locked at night. Attempting to climb the walls or sneak through the gate was an almost suicidal endeavor, fraught with the risk of recapture and severe punishment, not just for the courtesan, but potentially for anyone who aided her. You might imagine the nervous glances, the whispered conversations, the clandestine planning sessions in dimly lit corners. Stories circulated throughout Yashiwara of those who tried and failed. A young courtesan caught attempting to scale a wall in the dead of night, her kimono snagging, her frantic whispers silenced by the swift hand of a guard. The consequences for such attempts were harsh: public humiliation, confinement, further debt, and a marked reduction in status, ensuring that others would be deterred from similar actions. The message was clear. There was no escape without explicit permission. It was a chilling reminder of the gilded cage's true nature. A quirky tidbit: some desperate courtesans would attempt to feign illness or even madness to get transferred out of Yashiwara, sometimes to a more lenient house or even a temple. While this was rarely successful and often met with skepticism from the Akasan and the district's doctors, it shows the ingenuity born of desperation. Imagine trying to convincingly fake a terminal illness while still looking beautiful enough to avoid total ruin. Sometimes, a patron, deeply infatuated, might hatch a plan to help a courtesan escape. These elopements were often doomed from the start. If caught, the patron could face severe legal penalties, ruin his own reputation, and the courtesan would be dragged back to a far worse fate within Yashiwara. You might recall the tale of a samurai who lost everything: his position, his family's honor, and eventually his life, in a failed attempt to spirit away his beloved Warren. These stories served as cautionary tales, reinforcing the futility of defying the system. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, the yearning for freedom never truly died. For some, escape was not about physical flight, but about an internal rebellion. They found solace in art, dedicating themselves to their poetry or music, using their craft as a form of liberation. Others found agency in subtly manipulating their patrons or in carving out small moments of personal defiance within the rigid confines of their lives. The most poignant aspect of these escape attempts, whether physical or spiritual, was the sheer desperation that fueled them. These women were not criminals. They were individuals yearning for a life beyond the strictures imposed upon them. Their dreams of freedom often clashed violently with the economic and social realities of their time. You might visualize a small, worn charm, perhaps a tiny wooden bird, kept hidden by a courtesan, a silent symbol of her yearning for flight, a private hope that she might one day soar beyond the walls of Yashiwara. It's a small, fragile beacon of hope in a world designed for containment. The fates of those who succeeded in escaping were often shrouded in mystery. They would vanish from the records of Yashiwara, becoming legends or cautionary tales depending on the outcome. For those who were redeemed by patrons, their new lives were not without challenges. They often faced societal prejudice, struggling to adapt to a world that saw them as damaged goods, despite their newfound freedom. The stigma of Yashiwara clung to them, even beyond its gates. As you consider these stories, you realize that the walls of Yashiwara were not just physical. They were societal, economic, and psychological. Breaking free from them required an almost impossible convergence of luck, wealth, and unwavering determination. For every celebrated Messi age, there were countless silent stories of yearning, thwarted attempts, and lives lived out within the glittering prison. The stories of escape, both successful and tragic, serve as a stark reminder of the human spirit's enduring desire for freedom, even in the most beautiful of cages. They add a layer of raw, desperate humanity to the otherwise elegant and poised facade of the floating world, revealing the often painful truths hidden beneath layers of silk and ceremony. You've explored the vibrant life, the strict ceremonies, and even the desperate attempts at escape within Yashiwara. But no world, however gilded, remains unchanged forever. Now you'll witness the gradual, inexorable decline of the floating world, a slow fading of its brilliant light as societal shifts, moral judgments, and changing tastes began to erode its foundations. Imagine the turn of the 19th century. Edo is still a bustling metropolis, but subtle shifts are in the air. The strict class system of the Tokugawa shogunate, which inadvertently helped create and sustain Yashiwara, is beginning to show cracks. New ideas, new forms of entertainment, and changing economic realities are slowly but surely altering the landscape. The allure of the Warren, once absolute, begins to face competition from unexpected corners. It's like a grand, long-running play that, while still critically acclaimed, starts to see its audience dwindle as new forms of popular entertainment emerge. One significant factor in Yashiwara's decline was the rise of the geisha. As you recall, geisha focused purely on entertainment, offering sophisticated companionship without the sexual component. This distinction became increasingly important as public morality, or at least public perception, began to shift. Wealthy patrons could now seek intellectual stimulation and artistic enjoyment without the social stigma associated with visiting a courtesan. Geisha houses, being less regulated and often more integrated into various districts, offered a more accessible and arguably respectable form of entertainment. You might see a younger generation of patrons gravitating towards the more subtle charm of a geisha house, leaving the older, more formal akiya feeling somewhat antiquated. Economic changes also played a crucial role. The akiya maintained an incredibly high overhead. The lavish kimonos, the extensive training, the sheer number of staff required to maintain an Warren's lifestyle, all came at an exorbitant cost. As Japan entered periods of economic fluctuation, and as the merchant class, while still powerful, began to diversify its spending, fewer individuals could afford the astronomical fees required for a top-tier courtesan. The exclusivity that once defined Yashiwara became its financial burden. It's like a luxury brand failing, because only a handful of people can still afford their products, and the market for extreme opulence shrinks. The Meiji Restoration in 1868 dealt a significant blow. This period of rapid modernization and westernization brought about radical social and political reforms. The new government, eager to present a civilized image to the West, began to view institutions like Yashiwara with disapproval. While not immediately abolished, the pressure to reform and eventually dismantle licensed prostitution districts grew. Laws were introduced that aimed to liberate courtesans, though often these liberations were chaotic and poorly managed, leaving many women in worse situations. You might observe a sense of apprehension among the akiya staff, a fear of the unknown changes sweeping through the nation. The traditional, multi-layered kimono of the Warren, once the epitome of fashion, slowly began to seem outdated compared to simpler, more modern styles, even within Japan. The elaborate hairstyles, while still recognized as iconic, became impractical for a changing society that valued efficiency and a less ceremonial approach to daily life. You might notice a subtle shift in the clothing worn by younger women outside Yoshiwara, signaling a broader change in aesthetic preferences. Historians still argue whether the decline of Yoshiwara was a necessary step towards modern societal values or a tragic loss of a unique cultural institution that, despite its flaws, provided a complex haven for women. The very confinement that once defined Yoshiwara's exclusivity also became a liability. As Edo evolved into Tokyo, with new transportation and communication networks, the isolated, walled-off district felt increasingly anachronistic. People sought entertainment that was more readily available, less formal, and less demanding of their time and resources. The world outside the gate was moving faster, and Yoshiwara, trapped in its elaborate rituals, struggled to keep pace. It's like a grand, old-fashioned opera house trying to compete with the advent of cinema. Moral arguments against prostitution also gained more traction, influenced partly by Western ideas about women's rights and social welfare. While these changes were slow and often superficial, they contributed to a changing public perception of Yoshiwara, shifting it from a place of admired cultural artistry to one seen primarily as a symbol of societal degradation. You might feel a subtle chill in the air, a sense of impending change, as the district's once unassailable prestige slowly erodes. By the early 20th century, the golden age of the Warren was largely over. While licensed pleasure quarters continued to exist in various forms, the dazzling prominence and cultural influence of the Edo-era Warren had faded. The elaborate Warren Dachu became a historical reenactment, a tourist attraction rather than a vibrant part of contemporary life. The Grand Akiya either closed their doors or transformed into more modern establishments, shedding the rituals and hierarchies of the past. You might walk through the streets of what was once Nakamachi and find them quieter, less vibrant, the grandeur of the old houses replaced by newer, less ornate structures. The sounds of shamisen music are fewer, replaced by the occasional motor car or the distant rumble of a train. The lingering scent of incense and perfume gives way to the smells of modern industry. The magic is gone, replaced by the mundane. The women who once graced these gilded cages also saw their lives change. Some managed to adapt to the new realities, finding livelihoods in other forms of entertainment or in more conventional roles. For others, the transition was difficult, leaving them without the skills or support systems to navigate a rapidly changing world. The carefully constructed world that had defined their existence for centuries was crumbling, leaving them adrift. The decline of Yoshiwara is a testament to the impermanence of even the most seemingly immutable social structures. It serves as a reminder that history is a dynamic force, constantly reshaping societies, tastes, and the very definitions of beauty and entertainment. The once bright flame of the floating world flickered and dimmed, eventually becoming a historical memory, a poignant chapter in the long and complex story of Edo Japan. You've traced the slow decline of Yoshiwara, its brilliant light fading with the changing times. Yet, the courtesans of Edo Japan did not simply disappear into the annals of history. Their influence, like the subtle scent of expensive incense, lingered, weaving itself into the very fabric of Japanese culture. Now, you'll discover how the figures of the Warren and their floating world endured, shaping Edo period art, fashion, literature, and even the collective memory of an entire nation. Imagine yourself strolling through a bustling Edo marketplace, perhaps in the mid-19th century, even as Yoshiwara itself begins its decline. You'd see more than just the latest catch from the fish market or bolts of everyday cotton. You'd see the ubiquitous ukiyo-e woodblock prints displayed prominently in shops, eagerly snatched up by commoners and samurai alike. These pictures of the floating world were the tabloids and fashion magazines of their day, and their most popular subjects were, without a doubt, the courtesans. You might pick up a print, beautifully colored, depicting a famous Warren in her most elaborate kimono, her hair a towering masterpiece. These prints captured her beauty, her iconic walk, and her dignified presence, immortalizing her for generations. Historians still argue whether ukiyo-e prints served to empower courtesans by immortalizing their beauty or further, commodified their existence by reducing them to visual spectacles. These prints were more than just pretty pictures. They were trendsetters. The intricate patterns on Warren's kimono, the specific way she tied her obi, the latest style of kanzashi in her hair, all would be eagerly copied by women outside Yoshiwara, adapting the opulent styles for their own, more modest attire. The courtesans were the ultimate fashionistas, their influence extending far beyond the confines of the pleasure district. You might notice a young woman on the street, her kimono patterned with a design you recognize from a print of a beloved Warren, a subtle nod to the trend-setting power of these confined beauties. It's like today's celebrity fashion lines, but with far more silk and less fast fashion. Beyond visual art, courtesans deeply influenced Edo literature. Their lives, filled with passion, intrigue, and often tragedy, provided rich material for novels, plays, and poetry. The ukiyo-zoshi tales of the floating world genre, for instance, frequently featured courtesans as protagonists, exploring their relationships with patrons, their struggles, and their triumphs. Playwrights for kabuki and joruri puppet theater drew inspiration from the dramatic lives and romantic entanglements of courtesans, creating enduring characters that captivated audiences. You might imagine a captivated audience leaning forward in a kabuki theater, watching a beautifully stylized depiction of Warren's dramatic encounter with a lovelorn samurai, their hearts aching for her tragic fate. Their intellectual prowess, particularly their mastery of poetry, also left an indelible mark. Many high-ranking courtesans were celebrated poets themselves, their verses published in collections and recited in literary salons. Their unique perspective, combining sophisticated artistry with the bittersweet realities of their confined lives, gave their poetry a distinctive poignancy that resonated deeply with readers. They wrote about fleeting beauty, the pain of separation, the solace of art, and the yearning for freedom, themes that transcended their immediate circumstances. It's like finding a profoundly moving collection of poems written by someone who is also a pop icon, but with a lot more historical weight. A quirky tidbit: some courtesans would publish small, personal collections of their poetry and calligraphy, often exquisitely bound. These collections were highly sought after by their patrons and admirers, not just for the artistic merit, but for the rare glimpse into the courtesan's inner world, beyond her public persona. Imagine a limited edition, signed volume of poetry by your favorite Edo celebrity. It was a true collector's item. The songs they sang, accompanied by the shamisen, also became incredibly popular, spreading throughout Edo and beyond. These melodies, often lamenting lost love or celebrating fleeting pleasures, became part of the common cultural repertoire, hummed by street vendors and performed in tea houses. The courtesans were, in essence, the pop stars of their time, their music echoing through the streets and homes of the city. Even elements of their highly ritualized etiquette found their way into broader society, subtly influencing social graces and polite interaction. The emphasis on subtle gestures, refined speech, and cultivated conversation, though exaggerated in Yoshiwara, reflected and reinforced wider Edo ideals of elegance and self-control. The legacy of the courtesans also shaped the image of Edo itself. When people thought of the vibrant, sophisticated culture of Edo, they often thought of Yoshiwara and its dazzling inhabitants. The district became synonymous with the city's unique blend of tradition, commerce, and pleasure, an iconic symbol of a specific historical era. You might visit a contemporary museum in Japan and find entire exhibitions dedicated to ukiyo-e prints of courtesans, showcasing their kimonos, their hair ornaments, and the stories of their lives. Their enduring presence in art and literature speaks to their profound impact on the cultural imagination, far outliving the physical walls of Yoshiwara. Historians still argue whether the cultural impact of courtesans should be viewed as a glorification of a problematic system or a testament to the resilience and artistic genius of the women who inhabited it. It's a complex ethical question, acknowledging both the beauty they created and the societal constraints they faced. As you reflect on their lasting impact, you realize that the courtesans, despite being confined within a specific social structure, managed to transcend those boundaries through their artistry and their compelling stories. They became muses, fashion icons, poets, musicians, and dramatic figures, leaving an indelible mark on Japanese cultural history. Their golden cages may have faded, but the brilliance of their contributions continues to shine, illuminating the intricate tapestry of Edo Japan's past. You've explored the cultural impact of courtesans, how their lives echoed through Edo society. Now, let's bring some of these incredible women to life. You'll encounter the fabled figures whose beauty, wit, and tragic stories transcended the walls of Yoshiwara, becoming legends in their own right, forever etched into the collective memory of Japan. Imagine yourself seated, not in an akiya, but in a storyteller's parlor in Edo, perhaps late in the evening. The air is warm, filled with the murmurs of an attentive audience. The storyteller, a man with a booming voice and a twinkle in his eye, begins to recount tales of the most celebrated Waren weaving fact with embellishment, just as history often does. These aren't just names, they are living embodiments of the floating world's allure. One of the most legendary figures is Tako, a name given to a lineage of Waren from the Hyogoya house. The most famous of these was likely the second Tako, active in the mid-17th century. Her beauty was said to be so profound that it could stop men in their tracks, her wit so sharp it could pierce any pretense. Tales of her intelligence and artistic mastery abound. One story tells of a wealthy and powerful samurai who was so infatuated with Tako that he tried to buy out her contract. When she refused, choosing her art over his possessive demands, he tragically had her executed. This dramatic tale, whether entirely true or embellished by time, cemented Tako's place as a symbol of both unattainable beauty and tragic defiance. You might hear the storyteller's voice drop, creating a dramatic pause, as he recounts this fateful refusal, her silent strength in the face of absolute power. Historians still argue about the precise historical details of the Takao legend, questioning how much of it is based on fact versus romanticized folklore. This blurring of lines between reality and myth is common for figures of such iconic status. Then there is Komurasaki, a truly tragic figure whose story is deeply intertwined with the theme of impossible love. Komurasaki was a beautiful and beloved courtesan of the late 17th century. Her heart was captured by Shurai Gunpachi, a dashing but penniless samurai who had fled his home after killing a man. Their love was passionate but doomed. Gunpachi, unable to afford Komurasaki's freedom, resorted to crime to fund their meetings. His desperate acts eventually led to his capture and execution. Legend says that Komurasaki, upon hearing of his death, committed suicide, choosing to follow her lover into the afterlife. This heart-wrenching tale became a hugely popular subject in kabuki theater and ukiyo-e prints, symbolizing the destructive power of love in the face of societal constraints. You can almost feel the collective sigh of the audience as the storyteller recounts their final, tragic separation, a true Edo-era Romeo and Juliet. A quirky tidbit: the tale of Komurasaki and Gunpachi is so famous that their graves are often visited together in a Tokyo temple, reflecting the enduring appeal of their tragic romance. Pilgrims leave offerings, a testament to the power of their story to resonate across centuries, blurring the line between historical figures and literary heroes. It's like visiting the real-life monument to a fictional couple, a curious blend of belief and narrative. Another celebrated Warren was Nishikigi, active in the early 18th century. She was renowned not just for her striking beauty, but for her exceptional intellectual prowess and her mastery of calligraphy and poetry. Her elegance and refined sensibilities made her a favorite among the most cultured and artistic patrons. Her story is less about dramatic tragedy and more about the embodiment of the Warren ideal, a woman who could command respect and admiration through her intelligence and artistry, even within the confines of her profession. You might imagine the storyteller describing her graceful hand as she penned a delicate poem, her wit sparkling in every word. The sheer celebrity of these women was immense. Their names were household words, their faces instantly recognizable from ukiyo-e prints. They inspired songs, poems, and plays. They were the original influencers, setting trends in fashion, hairstyle, and even speech patterns. The most successful Warren were shrewd businesswomen in their own right, negotiating terms, building loyal clienteles, and managing their own reputations, even if the money ultimately flowed to the Akiya. The stories of these famous courtesans often served a dual purpose. On one hand, they romanticized the floating world, enhancing its allure and drawing in new patrons. On the other, they often contained poignant warnings about the fleeting nature of beauty, the pain of unrequited love, and the inherent limitations of a courtesan's life. They were cautionary tales wrapped in exquisite silk. You might hear about Ajimaki, another Warren whose beauty was matched only by her loyalty. Her unwavering devotion to a patron, even through his misfortune, became a symbol of fidelity within the pleasure quarter, a stark contrast to the transactional nature of many relationships there. These stories elevated courtesans beyond mere objects of desire, showcasing their capacity for deep emotion and unwavering character. As the storyteller concludes his tales, a quiet reverence fills the parlor. The figures of Takao, Komurasaki, and Nishikigi once real women, now exist as powerful archetypes, embodying the diverse experiences of courtesans in Edo Japan. Their fabled lives, whether ending in glory or despair, continue to speak to the enduring human fascination with beauty, love, and the complex choices made within the confines of society. They remind you that even in the most restricted of worlds, individuals can leave an unforgettable mark. You've heard the fabled tales of courtesans from centuries past, their lives seemingly confined to the historical record. But the influence of the floating world and the women who inhabited it didn't simply vanish with the Meiji Restoration. Now, you'll discover how the echoes of the courtesan's world persist, subtly yet powerfully, in contemporary Japanese culture, entertainment, and even in your own perceptions. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling streets of modern Tokyo, a city of neon lights and towering skyscrapers. The sounds are different: the hum of electric trains, the chatter of crowds, the distant thump of pop music from a shop. Yet, if you look closely, you can still find traces of the Edo past, particularly the legacy of the courtesans. It's like finding ancient, beautiful roots growing beneath a glittering, modern city. Perhaps the most direct echo is in the enduring popularity of historical dramas and films. Japanese cinema and television frequently revisit the Edo period, and the lives of courtesans are a recurring, fascinating subject. You might watch a beautifully shot period piece, recreating the opulent kimonos, the elaborate hairstyles, and the refined manners of the Warren. These modern portrayals, while sometimes romanticized, keep the stories and the visual aesthetic of the floating world alive for contemporary audiences, ensuring that figures like Takao and Komurasaki remain household names. It's like Hollywood's fascination with historical royalty, but with more intricate hair and more tragic endings. The aesthetic of the Warren continues to inspire fashion and beauty trends. While no one is walking around in full Warren regalia, elements of their style can be seen in modern interpretations of traditional Japanese clothing. The bold patterns of kimonos, the intricate designs of hair ornaments, and even certain makeup techniques draw inspiration from the courtesan's unique look. You might attend a modern fashion show in Tokyo and see designers incorporating Edo period elegance into contemporary designs, a clear homage to the iconic style. The performing arts also bear the imprint of the courtesans. Kabuki and Nihon Buyo, traditional Japanese dance, still perform plays and dances that originated in the pleasure quarters, or that were inspired by the lives and stories of courtesans. The specific movements, the dramatic gestures, and the musical accompaniments often carry echoes of the Warren's performances. You might attend a classical dance performance and witness a dancer perfectly execute a pose that is unmistakably reminiscent of an Warren in procession, a living bridge to the past. Historians still argue about the extent to which modern interpretations accurately reflect the historical realities of courtesan life versus perpetuating romanticized myths. The debate is ongoing, highlighting the complex relationship between history and popular culture. The geisha tradition, which, as you recall, distinguished itself from the courtesan system, continues to thrive in certain pockets of Japan, particularly in Kyoto's Jin district. While distinct, the geisha's existence is a direct evolutionary descendant of the Edo entertainment world that also birthed the courtesan. The refined artistry, the mastery of traditional music and dance, and the cultivation of sophisticated conversation. All have roots in the demanding expectations placed upon the women of the pleasure quarters. You might visit a tea house in Kyoto and see a geisha, her movements graceful, her conversation witty, and recognize the echoes of the intellectual cultivation that was demanded of an warin. A quirky tidbit: in some modern festivals and tourist events in Japan, particularly in areas historically associated with pleasure quarters, highly stylized warin processions are reenacted. These aren't just historical curiosities. They are a way for modern Japanese society to engage with and celebrate a specific aspect of their cultural heritage, allowing people to witness the spectacle of the warin dachu firsthand, albeit as a theatrical performance. It's like a living museum exhibit, but with real people wearing incredible costumes. The concept of the floating world itself, ukiyo, continues to resonate in contemporary Japanese consciousness. It speaks to a certain fleeting beauty, an appreciation of transient pleasures, and a poignant awareness of impermanence. This philosophical idea, so central to the Edo period and the lives of its courtesans, remains a powerful undercurrent in modern Japanese art, literature, and even everyday sensibilities. You might find yourself contemplating the beauty of a cherry blossom, knowing its petals will soon fall, and feel a connection to that ancient philosophy. Even the architecture of old Edo, though largely replaced by modern concrete and steel, occasionally surfaces in preserved districts or in modern designs that pay homage to traditional aesthetics. The latticework, the paper screens, the subtle garden elements, these are visual cues that remind you of the spaces where courtesans once lived and entertained. You might see a modern restaurant that incorporates traditional Edo design elements, creating a sense of timeless elegance. The psychological impact of the courtesan's story also endures. They are figures of both tragedy and empowerment, embodying the complexities of beauty, exploitation, and resilience. Their lives offer a window into societal norms, gender roles, and the enduring human capacity for survival and creativity in challenging circumstances. They spark conversations about agency, freedom, and the cost of societal ideals. As you consider these modern echoes, you realize that the courtesans of Edo Japan were not just historical footnotes. They were vibrant, complex individuals whose lives, loves, and artistry continue to influence the cultural landscape. Their stories, both fabled and forgotten, serve as a constant reminder that the past is never truly past. It lingers in the art we create, the traditions we uphold, and the very way we understand beauty and human experience. The gilded cages may be gone, but their legacy, shimmering and complex, remains. You've traced the cultural echoes of courtesans through modern Japan, a testament to their lasting impression. But history, like the intricate patterns on an warin's kimono, is rarely a simple, single thread. Now, you'll delve into the ongoing scholarly debates, the unfinished arguments among historians who continue to grapple with the complex legacy of the floating world, challenging simple narratives and revealing the nuanced truths beneath the glittering surface. Imagine a hushed university archive, far from the bustling streets of Edo. Here, historians pore over ancient texts, decipher faded ledgers, and analyze intricate ukiyo-e prints, seeking to understand the lives of courtesans. Yet, despite their meticulous research, fundamental questions remain, fueling vigorous debate and reminding us that the past is always open to reinterpretation. It's like forensic archaeology, but the artifacts are poems and account books, and the mystery is human experience. One of the most central and uncomfortable debates revolves around the concept of agency. Were courtesans truly enslaved, victims of a brutal system of exploitation, sold into sexual servitude with no hope of escape? Or did they, particularly the high-ranking Warren, possess a surprising degree of agency within their confined world, exerting influence, making choices, and even finding forms of empowerment through their artistry and wit? Historians still argue whether the Warrens' power was real or merely an illusion within a patriarchal society. Some scholars emphasize the harsh realities of debt and confinement, viewing them primarily as victims. Others point to their celebrated status, their cultural influence, and the rare instances of messiege as evidence of their ability to navigate and even thrive within the system. You might hear the passionate arguments of scholars, each presenting their evidence, trying to uncover the truth of these complex lives. Another significant debate concerns the nature of their relationships. Was the love between a courtesan and her patron ever genuine, or was it always a calculated performance, a transactional exchange of services for money and gifts? While romantic tales of tragic love pervade folklore, many historians emphasize the economic realities. They question whether emotional bonds could truly flourish in a context of inherent inequality and commercial obligation. Yet, other scholars contend that human emotions are rarely so neatly compartmentalized, and genuine affection and respect could, and often did, develop, however constrained by circumstance. You might consider the poignant letters you imagine them writing, and wonder if they were truly expressions of the heart or carefully crafted pieces of art designed to retain a patron. The very definition of prostitution in the context of Edo Japan is also debated. Was Yashiwara simply a highly organized red light district, or was it a unique cultural institution that blended entertainment, art, and commerce in a way unparalleled elsewhere? Some argue that applying modern Western definitions to historical Japanese practices risks misinterpreting the unique social and cultural context. They suggest that the Warrens' role encompassed far more than just sexual services, making a simple categorization insufficient. It's like trying to fit a multifaceted diamond into a single, predefined box. A quirky tidbit: the detailed account books of Akiya, meticulously preserved in some archives, are a treasure trove for historians, revealing intricate details about daily expenses, patron visits, and the fluctuating values of courtesans. However, even these factual records are open to interpretation, with scholars debating how much they reveal about the courtesans' personal lives versus merely their financial transactions. It's like having a detailed receipt for a meal, but still arguing about the conversation that took place over dinner. The role of the Akiya proprietresses, the Akasan, is also a subject of historical discussion. Were they exploitative figures, perpetuating the system of debt and control over the women under their charge? Or were they skilled businesswomen, often former courtesans themselves, who provided a form of security and opportunity within a challenging society, acting as surrogate mothers and protectors? Their motivations and actions are often viewed through a complex lens, acknowledging both their power and their own historical constraints. Finally, there is the debate about the overall moral judgment of Yashiwara itself. Should it be condemned as an inherently oppressive system of exploitation? Or should it be understood as a pragmatic response to the social and economic realities of Edo Japan, offering a unique, albeit flawed, path for certain women? This is perhaps the most difficult question, as it forces historians to confront their own biases and the complex ethical implications of historical interpretation. You might find yourself pondering these questions, recognizing that there are no easy answers. The beauty of historical debate lies precisely in this ambiguity, in the continuous effort to understand the past from multiple perspectives, to challenge established narratives, and to bring new insights to light. It's a continuous process of inquiry, a never-ending quest for a more complete truth. As you step away from the academic debates, you realize that the unfinished arguments surrounding the courtesans of Edo Japan are not a sign of failure, but a testament to the richness and complexity of their lives. They refuse to be easily categorized, forcing us to confront the inherent paradoxes of human existence, even within the most elaborately constructed golden cages. These ongoing discussions ensure that the legacy of the floating world remains vibrant, challenging, and endlessly fascinating, much like the women themselves. You've journeyed through the vibrant, complex, and often heartbreaking world of Yashiwara, from its glittering facade to its hidden depths. We've traced the arduous path of a courtesan, witnessed the daily rituals of beauty, understood the patron's pursuit, and explored the intricate web of ceremonies, rivalries, and emotions that define their lives. You've seen its decline and its enduring echoes in modern Japan. Now, as our journey through the floating world concludes, let's reflect on its ultimate legacy and the lessons it continues to offer. Imagine the Amen Gate, standing silent under the moon, its once bustling entrance now quiet. The sounds of shamisen music and laughter are long gone, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Yashiwara as a physical place, as a licensed pleasure district, is no more. It was ultimately abolished in 1958, a victim of changing social norms and anti-prostitution laws. Yet, to say it simply ended would be to misunderstand its profound impact. The floating world, for all its contradictions, left an indelible mark on Japanese culture and history, and continues to resonate in ways both overt and subtle. Its legacy is multifaceted. On one hand, it represents a period of extraordinary artistic and cultural flourishing. The courtesans, particularly the Warren, were central to this. They were not merely beautiful women. They were highly cultivated artists, intellectuals, and trendsetters who shaped fashion, literature, music, and dance. Their unique position, at the intersection of elite culture and popular entertainment, allowed them to influence society in ways that few other women of their era could. You might recall the vibrant ukiyo-e prints, the kabuki plays, the elegant poetry, all born from or deeply influenced by the world of Yashiwara. This artistic legacy is perhaps its most beautiful and undeniable contribution. On the other hand, Yashiwara remains a powerful symbol of exploitation and confinement. The system of debt, the lack of freedom, and the inherent commodification of human beings, these darker aspects cannot and should not be ignored. The stories of women sold into servitude, of shattered dreams and unfulfilled lives, are a stark reminder of the human cost beneath the glittering surface. This uncomfortable truth forces us to confront the complex morality of the past and to avoid romanticizing a system built on profound inequalities. Historians continue to grapple with this dual legacy, recognizing that historical phenomena are rarely purely good or purely evil, but rather complex tapestries woven with threads of both light and shadow. The figures of the Warren themselves continue to captivate. They embody a paradox: women who were both celebrated and constrained, powerful yet powerless, objects of desire yet subjects of immense intellectual and artistic talent. Their resilience, their artistry, and their ability to forge lives of dignity and meaning within a restrictive system offer timeless insights into the human spirit. They remind us that even in the most challenging circumstances, individuals can find ways to create, to connect, and to leave an unforgettable mark. You might feel a lingering sense of awe for their strength, even as you lament their circumstances. The philosophical concept of ukiyo, the floating world, born from this era, also endures. It speaks to the transient nature of life, the beauty found in fleeting moments, and the acceptance of impermanence. This deep appreciation for ephemeral beauty, so central to the courtesans' lives, became a cornerstone of Japanese aesthetics and continues to resonate in modern art forms and cultural sensibilities. It's a bittersweet philosophy, acknowledging both joy and inevitable loss, perfectly embodied by the floating world itself. In a broader sense, Yashiwara stands as a testament to the complex, often contradictory nature of human society. It was a place where beauty and exploitation, freedom and confinement, art and commerce converged in a unique and powerful way. It forces us to ask difficult questions about agency, morality, and the ways societies define and utilize human value. You leave this journey with a deeper understanding, not just of a historical place, but of the intricate dance between individual lives and societal structures. The whispers of the shamisen, the rustle of silk kimonos, the ghost of laughter behind latticed windows, they may be silent now, but the stories, the art, and the enduring questions they provoke continue to reverberate through time. The floating world, in its decline, transformed from a physical place into a powerful cultural memory, forever reminding us of a unique and complex chapter in human history. Its legacy is not just in what it was, but in what it continues to make us ponder about humanity itself.